At least you've got a drive.
That's
Yeah, no, that is good.
Detox.
Come on, Al.
I
Turn
get
it
home,
down.
sometimes I'm not using the speaker. Oh, yeah, just.
Al, audio.
You know, Jordan's audio, but hang on, I've got a problem.
Dear and I.
Well, we know that. But fix your silly thing.
Oh, here we are.
Well done. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
Right, how's that sound? All good. Right, yeah, well, welcome to this ordinary meeting of Environment Southland today, March. I do have two apologies or a leave of absence. Roger.
I'll move those.
Okay, David, second those, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carry. Do we know of any declarations of interest? No. It's all good. That off. Public forum petitions, deputations. We do have a public forum speaker. So we'll invite Nathan. What's yours? Welcome. Yeah, you have, as you know, Nathan, we have 10 minutes. You can use that whatever you want. If you want time or like some time for questions, which you probably can.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so that's controlled. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Excellent.
let's get that right.
Okay, thank you all for your time today. My name is Nathan Surendra. I'm a professional engineer and chair of the Wise Response Society and convener of Electrify Southland. I am here today to talk about some challenges that we have. First, I'd just like to touch on this data grid consent. Obviously, being a non-notified consent, basically I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to speak to a couple of issues which I think are of interest to this council and just see where we get to. Environment Southland has granted the regional consent for the data grid centre, covering groundwater extraction, stormwater discharges and wetland effects. You also have responsibilities around air quality in particular. And the SDC notification defers all of that to yes. So you hold the only regulatory lever on the largest water and energy consumer proposed for the region in recent times. A little bit on adiabatic cooling, which is the method of cooling that the data centre proposes to use. And this is something that is my wheelhouse. I'm HVAC professional and do this sort of thing as a day job. So it's a closed loop chilled water circuit through the data hall. And then heat exchangers. If you look at the diagram down to the bottom right there, that's a typical adiabatic cooler. Now in the middle is a V shape. That's where the cooling coils are, and the air is drawn across those by the fan on the top. In adiabatic mode, once temperatures are above a certain design threshold, then it actually pours water down a kind of curtain of sorts. You think of it like a thin screen on the outside of the cooler. So that that warm air is pre-cooled by the water that's evaporated off as that goes. And as you can see in the image above, you can see the water as coming off as steam in the top image there. Now, the question that I have for you is, has the council really understood the scale of what's going on here? So 280 megawatts of cooling in adiabatic cooling mode, which is on a design basis, probably likely to be about 1,000 hours per year, is around about 400 cubic meters of water per hour for that period, roughly. So at the sort of demand we're talking about the annual water consumption of a small town. Southland's freshwater is already under pressure, nutrients limits, allocation caps, ecosystem requirements, etc. The proposed water plan and land plan imposes strict allocation and quality limits, and climate change projections indicate more variable rainfall and potential seasonal deficits. So a few questions on that. Why is the data grid water not being not being published at this point? Has a cumulative water demand assessment been undertaken for the Macadale catchment? And is allocation currently contested in this catchment? On the energy side of things, that 280 megawatts makes it the second largest electricity demand after TY, and at full build out, because this is just phase one, nearly double the TY smelter's energy demand. There's 840,000 litres of diesel storage proposed on the site for 84 backup generators, and I say backup in inverted commas, because the MB briefing in June 2025, Meridian voiced concerns about the power supply arrangement, and there is no guarantee that we will have 280 megawatts of consented and operating power fueling this data centre when it's built supposedly 3 years from now. And if the grid supply is uncertain, what are the air quality implications of the default which that will force them into in that case, which is using those diesel generators full time as their primary power supply? Has that been modelled? Are you aware that globally facilities like this have been built against grid operators' recommendations and have fallen back on that fossil fuel operation mode with significant negative local air quality effects? And I've got here some case study information from Virginia where this is already happening. I'd like to go on though to a bigger problem, because that's just kind of a sideshow at the moment, which is the crisis in Hormuz and the fuel supply situation. So this is a crisis I warned about 10 years ago to this council. There's a link there to a presentation I gave to the 2015 long-term plan. It's likely to have a dramatic effect on regional energy output, economic output, and a major negative impact on well-being for our people in the region in months ahead. Specifically, our economy runs on diesel. I need to list all of those industries that are diesel dependent with no near-term alternative. And we can expect in a couple of months outright shortages, not just fuel price spikes, but a complete lack of available diesel. And this is now finally, media sort of catching up and reporting on this. I was out the gate a week and a half ago saying we need to implement rationing now, because whatever fuel we've got in country, plus the stuff that's on the ships getting here, is what we're going to have going forwards. And that may be for 6 months or more. You know, the overall effect of this could easily drag out to 12, 18 months. In that context, the 3-year construction program for a hyperscale data center looks optimistic. And questions the council should be asking itself at this point are, what infrastructure spend can we defer in the hope of reducing fuel prices and do our part in conserving the fuel we have? Do we have a clear sense of essential versus elective spend this year? Have we adequately funded our CDM group to actually manage this crisis? And spoiler alert, not even close. What emergency measures should we take at the regional level, and what can we do to plan in that direction in the critical weeks ahead? I'm proposing this idea of tradable energy quotas, which is basically a tradable quota, and there's some information on it there. I'm happy to talk to that in the questions. I don't want to take all my time talking, so I'm going to stop there and open for any questions.
Thanks, Nathan. Questions, Boris?
Thank you, Nathan. How many litres per second will a data group use? You said 400 cubic meters per hour.
Yeah, oh goodness, is it something like 160 litres a second, I think, when I did the calculations? Sorry, I don't have that.
111.
Sorry?
111
111, there you go. Okay, so yeah.
litres per second.
Right, yeah.
Okay, that's a huge amount of water.
It is. It's a vast amount. Well, like I say, it's the equivalent of a small town, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, and being that it's evaporating the water,
Yes.
what is the residues left behind? What happens to that?
What happens is you get a mineral buildup on the evaporating media, and in the system itself, as those minerals suspended in the water concentrate, they do what's called a blowdown operation, where periodically they can backflush the system to shift all of that mineral deposits out of the system, and that's usually just put to drain. It's the minerals that are in the water. I'm not so concerned about that. It's not necessarily, contaminated or anything in any meaningful sense. It's quite a standard part of operation of that type of system. It's more just total amount of water being abstracted from groundwater.
Yeah, but Nathan, surely, I suppose to John's point, if there's already elevated levels of contaminant, then you're going to elevate them
Yes.
numerous fold more.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Nathan, the current crisis and the Gulf.
Yeah.
It's a here and now issue, which is going to generate here and now short to arrive problems in a greater degree for the region. If it doesn't get resolved, and a lot of indications that it's going to continue in its current trajectory.
Yeah.
Then the data center is going to be something that emerges in the next 2 to 3 years with of course, early investment and construction of that facility.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take it from what you've said in your briefing that actually the project at Makariri might actually be put on hold, at risk, compromised by what's occurring?
I think that's almost certain at this point. It may just manifest as slight delays. It really depends on how far this 20% of global oil supply, or actually 40% of traded global oil supply that is lost from the global system, plays out through the global economy.
If you went to a system based on a tradable energy quota,
Yes.
and someone was really, really keen to invest in a data center construction,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought the finance with them, would they be able to potentially buy into that system at the expense of existing industry?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes without saying. Across the globe, we're seeing these data centers contest for resources with other potential uses of them, and because of the amount of capital investment that they've attracted, because of these promise of astronomical returns, which may or may not materialize, they have the resources to do so. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Nathan, another question relating to the energy use. I know Tiwai have they're on a contract that, if needed, they scale back.
Yes.
And deliver back to the grid.
Yes.
To maintain other core service across the community. The data center will actually have a fixed supply contract, I'd imagine. I don't imagine there'll be
Correct.
that flexibility in the system. So if we're not meeting demand,
Yes.
then it'll be the rest of the community that possibly miss out.
No, so typically what happens, and the top sentence on this slide here speaks to this. So basically what grid operators are doing is exercising powers similar to the powers that they have with the agreements they have with Tiwai, whereby they force those centres off the grid for peak times so that we can meet demand out in the broader for the rest of society. But what that does from the data centres perspective is it forces them to use those backup generators more frequently.
Just about time. You actually make some interesting questions here, and I'd like to see some of the answers to them too. So
Yeah.
we'll certainly take that on board, and just for information for ourselves. And it's certainly quite challenging when we're talking about water allocation and things like that.
Yeah.
Certainly brought it to the fore. So look, we've
Just quickly, will we get a copy of these slides?
I believe, Jan, they can be circulated.
Jan's got them, so
Yeah.
thanks for coming in and
Yeah.
informing us of your
The
knowledge.
data
So-
centres are red herring. The problem is the outright fuel shortages we're facing, and that is what you need to be talking about today. And you need to put in place a plan now as to how you're going to respond to that.
Yeah.
Everything else off the agenda. That's my recommendation to you.
Thanks,
Very good. Thanks, Nathan.
Cheers.
Right, we'll move on to confirmation minutes. We've got quite a few here to go through, so bear with me. So we've got confirmation of minutes. Right there, Jan. Yep, all good. Confirmation minutes of the ordinary meeting of 9th Feb 2026. You have to move that, David?
Yeah, I'll move it.
David and secondary Morris, all in favour, say aye. Against, carried. And we've got an extraordinary meeting on the 18th of February 2026. I'll move on that. Randall, and second, Phil, in favour, say aye. Against. Any discussion? If we can go into the adoption of committee resolutions, the investments committee. How did that go? I wasn't actually here at that time. Does anybody want to?
I'll move.
You're happy to move?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple
Morris?
of notes there.
Yeah.
It's got me as a member of the committee, but I'm not I was an observer at that one, along with several other councillors. And also, I didn't note that Cassandra was attending via Zoom, and she also was a bit late attending the meeting too. So normally those sorts of things are recorded.
Yeah, no, we can tidy those bits and pieces up. We could
Maybe
move.
the same, seconded otherwise.
So, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Regulatory, go to the adoption of committee resolutions, or regulatory committee. Paul, do you-
No, it wouldn't be relevant. We discussed some slight alterations to terms of reference, which is good.
Yeah, happy to move them.
Have to move those.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, happy to second, but there was a question raised. This is on page 33 of our agenda, page 4 of these minutes. The question was raised whether there was a risk that a large number of farmers would be non-compliant this winter, and Ms. Richard explained that this is an emergent issue. And it was important that Environment Southland supports farmers towards compliance and provide clear messaging. I thought on the day that Ms. Richard said that yes, there was a risk. That wasn't clear.
Hayley, sorry. Did you hear the question from Morris? No, that's good. Did you hear?
I did not hear.
Morris, do you want to?
Excuse me, psyche throat. It's on page 4 of these minutes. It's the question I asked was, well, it doesn't say that I asked, but that doesn't matter. A question was raised whether there was a risk that a large number of farmers will be non-compliant this winter because of the requirement for them to have a consent for winter grazing. And the answer recorded in the minutes didn't say yes or no, it just says it was an emerging issue. I thought at the time the answer was yes, that there is a risk.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And also the statement that it is an issue and we're working on it actively with the industry and others to ensure that we have clear communications to farmers and other interested groups with respect to this issue so that everyone can understand what the requirement is of them this winter and what they can expect from Environment Southland as well.
Right, thank you. Okay. So I didn't second those.
Yeah, second those, so I do have seconded. In regards to that, so I'll put that, everybody in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. We go to the adoption of committee resolutions of the CE Review Committee, which is generally most of it's in public. But I'm happy to move that.
Lyndall seconded.
Lyndall can second it. Discussion, probably it's not, but I'll put that, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Move on to strategy and policy, the adoption of committee resolutions. Do you want to?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things to highlight, Chairman. We had a really interesting public forum presentation from some James Harkins College students who participated in one of the Enviro School's 2-day huis. They were excellent, and they asked us a question at the end. Just wanted to let councillors know that I'm formulating the best way to respond to that and the response. Students are quite busy, so getting together with them following that up is proving to take a little bit of time, but that's in train. Also wanted to highlight the 9.3, which is the Climate Change and Community Resilience Portfolio Update. That group will have since met, so we look forward to an update from that. And the other thing was the National Infrastructure Plan, which was 9.4. As far as I'm aware, a letter to express our concern about the scope of the national policy on managing natural hazard risks is underway. So With that, I will move those resolutions. Thank you.
Second that.
I can second those.
All in favour, say aye. It's carried. Move on. I don't know of any notification of extraordinary urgent business. My knowledge. No. No questions, yes? Don't think there's any questions. No, we'll move on to onto the reports. 1.1. I've been away a wee bit, but you can see if there's any questions in regards. We obviously had the field days. It's always great getting out into the community, and and probably the one thing we need to, in regards to that, was obviously the participated panel discussion on the future of local government. I think it was actually really good to yarn and get out there in the community and get asked a few questions, have a discussion. We had some good people on board. Mayor B. and Bow, I should say. Jeff Grant from Balfour and Jason Herrick from Feds in the south. So it's quite, I think it was all positive in regards to that. I think there were a few of us went to the Great South Workshop, which was really interesting. Some around the Infometrics economist, Nick Brunston. It was quite, whenever I look at those sort of things, Southland's in a good place for looking ahead, and I've seen the numbers in regards to that. And we did have the CE and myself had a couple of days in Wellington, and it was good to catch up with the regional sector and also the department DIA. Just had a good discussion around local government, simplifying local government scenario. So, questions, Alistair?
I just want to make a comment. I think that the informal discussion that was held in our tent regarding the changes in local government was probably more beneficial than any of the formal meetings, where there was a simple thing of some of our councillors, plus Rob Scott, plus a gentleman from the Otago Regional Council. And that seemed to cover a lot of areas and just informally break a few barriers down. And I think you did that well.
Thanks. Any other questions? Guys,
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just wondering, in the second last paragraph about the LGNZ Regional Sector Group meeting that you attended, wondering if you noticed any potential highlights that we need to be aware of in a roundtable discussion of council issues, what commonalities, anything that we need to, in that horizon that we need to be aware of that we might not be already.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on. It's an interesting discussion because from a point of local government reform and things like that, where we are, compared to the other councils are trying to find their way in regards to, we've got that discussion. It's a funny one to be in the room and go, we're actually in a process, and they're all sort of trying to grapple what the government wants to do with simplifying local government. So we're certainly promoting what we're doing in regards to that and getting on with it. I'm just asking a little bit, Rob, in regards to anything else that sort of specifically the themes.
I think through your chair, just as you said, we are in quite a different position with a local government commission process underway. There's a number of others that are quite keen to do a fast track change process. Greater Wellington, I think, is looking at that. So there's quite a bit of variation. So we're certainly sharing our experience and listening to what the others are saying. But also, everyone's pretty consistent around the regional functions need to be delivered at the right scale. And there's a risk of them not, if they're not delivered at the right scale, there's a risk of actually those functions not being affected. So that's been a common theme, I think, Chair.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, there's been plenty of submissions on the BIA and the submissions about the simplifying government, and they're obviously working through that at the moment. So we're hoping for a bit more positive, well, I shouldn't say positive, hopefully they can work this out. The information they got. Oh, sorry, David, John.
Yeah, look, I was just going to say about at the field days, I thought the debate was really well attended. It was something quite novel and getting people to come. And, you know, he said, well, Jeremy, it was good discussion and brought out points of difference. And I'd also compliment Sam on the way the technology works online. Even this morning, I can see interviews getting around and they're crystal clear and they're sharp, and you know, you do a good job at putting a professional face forward. So there's some new opportunities that we haven't always had, but it's a good way of getting it out and about.
Yeah, if I can say, I just want to thank all the staff with regards to field days. It's a great opportunity for 40,000 people walking past your gateway. It's and certainly there's been plenty of good conversations. It's good teamwork. Yeah. John?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, I only made it to field days one day and I had other commitments, so I never actually made it into the 10. I guess just a question to staff and all councillors there, was there anything that hasn't been flagged that was brought up by the community with any engagement to touch on a later date, or is it all pretty well across it?
Just looking at,
across.
I think it was the usual bits and bobs today.
I think it was with specific discussions from people that had, under the new capital value rating, coming in saying, well, we're paying rates and we've got a problem, so obviously you're going to come and do work for us. Where's that at? So that surfaced there practically on the day.
If I can, I'll try and make a statement in regards. I think when the province is doing well, people are a lot happier, you know, and want to talk positive. And I'm not trying to be bad about it, but when things are a bit tight, they'd start wanting to vent a wee bit more. So I think that, like, the field days are real positive out there at the moment. As the rural sector is doing exceptionally well in the commodity prices. So generally, it was pretty positive. We certainly still get feedback. You know, we can improve things, and that's normal. So we expect that, and we take that on board. Sam, do you want to?
Just to answer that question, one thing that we were really impressed with was the amount of people that came up and wanted to talk about farm plans, and it was far greater than we thought. Now, we had people from the farm plan team there every day, all 3 days, but it was probably the most popular topic was people coming up and saying, who can I talk to about farm plans? And these were people that, you know, just had a blank piece of paper at this stage, you know what I mean? So it was that was really encouraging and was much greater than we'd predicted. And that was really was the number one topic. So that was good, and the team did a great job.
Yeah, I guess a question for you and perhaps for Rob, and those discussions with local government New Zealand entities, as well as the local government commission investigation engagements, are you taking a sense that even though our local government commission investigation predated the simplifying local government proposal, does that, or to what degree does it guarantee immunity from subsequent central government intervention overriding that process at some point towards as it continues? Are we 100% immune from central government intervention because of the local government commission investigation, or is there still potential for central government to override that at some point prior to its full completion?
I'll make a quick comment. Nothing's guaranteed. You know, this government has agendas and things like that, so we're acting a lot of good faith that we're going to be able to carry on this process, and the minister has indicated for us to carry on into this process. So that's the there's nothing, they have never indicated, no, stop, this is not going to work. I think there's actually more of saying they're understanding, they're seeing councils want to get on with some of the stuff. So I'm hoping that they probably open that up to be able to allow those regions get on with it. So there may be a more positive rather than restrict feeling. That's with
Yeah,
that.
and look, yeah, just agree, just confirm the chair's view that the minister has endorsed, not sure endorsed is quite the right word, but just said that this process should continue and should be seen through. He's also made comments about looking at some sort of alternate faster track process for the other councils involved in this local government commission process. No details of that yet, but it's been a statement that's been made, and we'll see how it develops. But as the chair says, there's no guarantees on, so we'll see. We're expecting decisions on the local government, the simplified local government process. We're expecting some sort of decisions in the next couple of months, April, maybe in May. Noting that there is a proposal that they've consulted on, so we'll get a bit of clarity at that point.
Good. We've got the other, sorry.
Thank you. The note you're on leave, but in actual fact, you're in contact with a lot of us probably during the leave anyway, so it wasn't really much leave. With regards to field day, I was there for one day and it was quite interesting to catch up with our industry chair, who was giving me information, and I needed to do this and I needed to do that, and so I went and spoke to the Minister, Minister Hogarth, because I was told to, and fortunately the information I was given was completely different. So Minister Hogarth and myself had a good yarn for a little bit, and cleared up a few things, and then it was good to see the couch sit down and talk. It was certainly well run, and a few questions online as well. So that was very interesting and very good. So congratulations to the staff for being there for all those days and the amount of people that were coming through, and the scary stuffed predators. Just thought I'd throw that in.
You got to get a new cat.
Gotta get a new cat.
I want them to be scared.
Thank you.
Right, I'll move on. Alistair, do you want to talk to your report there?
I would like to. I feel extremely privileged to be asked to go. I also had a yarn to Mr. Hogarth. He must have been about sick of us by then because we all had the same thing, and he did respond, but nothing's happened. The privilege that I had was attending breakfast with Nicola Willis and Rachel. Rachel's not with us this morning, but she looked after me, kept me under some level of control. But when we went to the mayoral forum, it was Mr. Scott was the chairman, and Mr. Scott filled the whole time. And when it came to the end point, because he was talking busily about TAs and what they've got to do and all those sort of things, heading in Nicola Willis's ear, I thought it's about time we got some rural stuff in there, and I did. And she came and thanked me for it. So we've got it, and you know this, everyone else knows this. Somebody's got to sit on Rob Scott. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
No. Rightio. Actually, just in regards, I'll just quickly, we got access to, there was obviously a lot of MPs running around the field days, and Nicola Willis, I had the opportunity actually to talk to the Prime Minister for a few minutes, just a valuable few minutes to put our point of view, what's happening into Southland. So it was a great opportunity. It's election year, so they all turn up with their gumboots, so it was great at the field days to do that, but they certainly, I think they know Southland's position, especially from me, most of the national MPs that were floating around, so.
Not all.
Hey.
Not all. A few colours missing.
Yeah. But anyway, right, we'll move on. Thanks. Any other verbal report? Sorry, Morris.
Jim, I'm not sure if it's appropriate. You can tell me if it's not, but it's not really a report, but it's a question as to what we're going to do about the questions that Nathan Surendran asked before, particularly about the fuel supply situation, whether we do have a contingency plan for that, for business constituents. And the second question is it true that the data centre will be using 111 litres per second of water? If it is, where is that coming from, and what impact will that have on local water supplies?
Can you put a bit of an action point together in regards to that?
We can respond.
He's obviously posed a few questions there in the presentation.
So we can respond, we can shape up.
Resolve to respond.
Okay, we'll resolve to respond to his question. Yeah, well, I'll move that we do resolve
I'll
to
second that.
respond
I'll second
for those questions that our speaker has asked. It should bring all the information to us, back into us too.
Thank you.
Who wants to,
I'll
you'll second that?
Yeah.
All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.
Chairman, just a quick,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
Councillor Morrison and I attended the Cargo AMP show, which was very busy and spoke to lots of people about local government commissions, surveys and opportunities for feedback. And I also attended the Waihapai community planting day a few weeks ago now, organised by the Enviro Schools team, really well put together as usual, fairly well attended, and although I didn't plant a tree, I brought out lots of weeds. So thanks to them, it was really good.
That's very good. It's good to hear. Right. Well, it's all.
Just the last one, I attended the Great South meeting on your behalf the other day, and the Great South are here today to talk to their letter of intent, so I don't need to say anything more than that. I attended that meeting.
We'll have an update very soon. Right, we'll move on. Thanks for those reports. We'll move on to CE's report.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take the report as read. Just a couple of things I'll highlight. We've talked about some of the reforms. We are in a period of significant reform for local government. It is unheard of in my career, which goes back some years. So we've got simplifying local government, RMA reform, rates capping, and we've been involved in submissions to all of these reforms. And as you know, we've also got a local government commission process underway here in Southland that we're working closely with the other councils on. And we're putting a real emphasis on encouraging the community to get involved in this important process. It is a once in a lifetime opportunity, so really important we get the public involved in this, and our team is working hard on it with the commission. We've got so we talked about the Southern Field Days, and that was a fantastic opportunity to engage with the community, and good to see a number of parts of the council involved in that with councillors also they're acting, still working as a team. We've got really positive to see the Catchment Improvement Fund delivery is progressing well. We've had a real strong interest in riparian planting, which is fantastic. It's an area that's close to my heart. And so the more riparian planting we can get, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So we've, to date, 42 projects have been approved across both riparian and other mitigation activities. And the integrated catchment management team, the wild and conduit work is progressing well at Midone. So that's obviously important for Southland. And we're also working hard around getting in some additional funding for this area. At the moment, there's not a lot of funding both here in Southland and across the country. So that's a real gap, and we're working hard on getting the funding. It was really good to see we've got some approval has been granted for the release of Chilean flame creeper leaf beetle, which has now been released across several sites in Southland. So this is a really important breakthrough, having a biocontrol agent to actually exert some sort of control on this pest species. We've a real focus in the catchment and drainage area around actually focusing on recovery work after the storm we had back in October. That work continues in the Iridi and Makarura catchments. So there's some floodbank repairs, erosion protection, and some willow management, and tree clearance, and also in the Dipton West area. Some work has begun this week as part of our Canal funded project. This work is necessary to reinstate the flood bank and ensure the flood scheme works as intended. Again, that canal work is a real opportunity for Southland, getting significant government funding into sort of building our infrastructure in this space. In the science area, we were focused so far this summer on 7 wetlands from different wetland types. So really important wetlands are a priority for us, as you know. And also staff have been working closely with Earth Science on the completion of the final component of the 4-volume regional climate change impact assessment report, which is a really important base document for our work and all the region's work in this in the climate change space. The strategy and regulation team have been busy with Waikaka Gold Mine. We talked about the data centre as well earlier on in our deputation, so that's been a big project. Corporate service, a big chunk of work is underway around information technology and business space upgrades. Really important to get this work done to help future-proof the organisation. And lastly, just in the emergency management space, which is a shared service, as you know, with the other councils, we host emergency management there's been a new manager appointed for Mackay, and he takes over the 25th of May. We're looking forward to that. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Questions? Yep, Phil and Morris.
Yeah, I guess, Rob, my question is kind of broad, not focusing on a specific thing, and I guess at the risk of channeling the lawyer from the movie The Castle, who says it's all about the vibe, I am picking up a vibe from your report. If you zoom out, that we're looking at a possible system level strain confronting the organisation. What I mean by that is the organisation is still functioning, but under increasing multi-directional strain. And it seems possible that some of the policy uncertainty coming out of Wellington is flowing into and impacting operations. You might pick one of the canary in the coal mine issues is the farm planning system and the uncertainty there that's left us a little bit in doubt as to what's expected and what we should be doing. So I guess from a governance perspective, it's possibly a situation where we're starting to see the cumulative effect of multiple pressures on our teams within ES, and possibly therefore it's a time when governance may need to be more active, more discerning and more explicit in prioritising for yourself and the staff, and being quite clear on what trade-offs are expected when it comes to timelines and information that we need. So I guess my question is, would you say this is a period where we're sort of confronted with that type of broad stress on the organisation, and are you comfortable that you're getting sufficient guidance from governance on priorities at this point?
There's certainly some clearer direction from central government around things like freshwater farm plans. We're looking forward to that coming forward, and we understand that's going to happen. I'm pretty confident that the teams, our message to the teams is we focus on our core business, getting the work done, and supporting the organisation to do that. We are looking at, we work closely with Te Rakahika and our regional sector colleagues around how do we work together and share information and share resource and ensure that our messaging around reforms is consistent and might be more effective. And I'm working, and we will be connecting. I will connect closely with you around keeping you informed of all that. So I'm comfortable at the moment and around our direction of travel. Noting there's a lot of work to be done and a huge amount of reform happening. We're navigating that, and I think we're keeping the organisation.
Thank you. Yes, a few questions, Mr. Chairman. I noticed on page, the first page, at the bottom there, you talk about media releases and a report of dead ducks in Lake Te Anau after 8 inquiries, and the nitrate report received only 5. Considering there were no dead ducks, I thought that was very, and that the nitrate issue is very serious. It was something that we perhaps needed to reprioritise. Just a comment really, but I think that we could make more. I know we've got some work coming up on the nitrate issue, but it's a very serious issue. Sorry, not really a question. I do have another question though about the intensive winter grazing field days. How many people attended those, and are they a good way to get out about the intensive winter grazing field days?
I'll ask Sam or Hayley the right ones. I mean, it is a joined up team effort here. We've got both the policy team and the land sustainability team involved in these. And so it is a joined up effort. I think we are getting good attendance, and they are very worthwhile. The more more effort we can put up front around working with our partners in this space. Everyone's got a role to play. The more effort we can put on working with our partners, I think the smoother the winter's going to be.
Sorry, just to clarify, the winter growth, the field days they're in April, is that right? They're coming up, so there's been advisory visits.
Through you, Chair, I can speak to attendance
We can talk about
historically.
last year.
Historically, through you, Chair, they have been very well attended, and in fact, we have received quite positive feedback from attendees as to their use. And so that's why we've rolled out that program again. We have a much wider invite list this year, because we also acknowledge not just obviously the role that farmers play in this, but their contractors, seed suppliers, so on and so forth. Obviously the crop's already in now, but we do talk to, making sure you're setting yourself up for success at every stage of the process with respect to winter grazing, from your wintering plan through to how you engage a contractor, etc., right through then into successful grazing.
So the question really was how many people turn up, and is it a good expenditure of our resources using that method?
Through you, Chair, we've certainly found to be good attendance and high quality interactions, and that's the thing. So we run a number of farm plan workshops as well around the region, and again, this was some really good high quality interactions there. So we believe it's worthwhile. So.
If I can add, I have been to those field days to make sure they're getting out on the ground. There are the tweaks and rules and things that people have been informed. And I think at the end of the day, if you got someone goes away and implements some of the neighbours, look, it sort of can spread out because it was farmers looking over the fence wondering what's going on. So, and I know Alistair has been involved in some. They've been pretty good. Get out on the ground and actually understand some of the rules. David.
Yeah, just a supplementary. I see in here that you've had 7 pre-winter visits. Were they things that you identified or people came to you?
Yeah, there's certainly things that we've
advisory visits, site visits.
Yeah, there's certainly gone to areas where we think there might be issues. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, following a flyover.
Yeah. Or an ongoing issue. So an issue that we've had in the previous year, and it's a follow-up visit from there.
Okay. Hayley.
Yeah, I just also wanted to add that we're also going to catchment groups as well, as we find that's a really useful forum for people to ask questions, get information, seek clarification, but also then to connect in with our land sustainability team. So if they want to have on-farm advice with respect to their practice or their intentions at any stage of the year, because we do recognise that intensive winter grazing, much like a puppy, is not just for Christmas, it's not just for winter, it's a year-round set of considerations.
Alistair.
I just want to say in advance that Sam is very good, and he's been working away on the cost of the Environment Awards. And we need to know this sort of thing to get out there and advertise it. Last year's Environment Awards cost $18,000. Now, also, Sam and his team are looking at changing the situation and maybe doing it another way. But you'll remember the year before, the cost of it was $74,000. So there's some credit gone in, and we think that it was only the compe's wages were cheaper this year.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, and just to really clarify, we're looking at putting an alternative proposal up as well, so that we can evaluate which of those two we decide which route we decide to go down. So, but yeah, we certainly the sponsors, we doubled the sponsorship income this year, and we really nailed those costs down. As you say, we're getting a very cheap MC.
Yeah, and a very effective one too, because we'll get them next year, I hope. But it's good to get that out in front of us, so that if anybody asks, you know where it is.
Doesn't look like any more questions. Just on the bottom page in regards to page. I don't even know. Yeah, just about, we're still waiting the final countersign charge to contract with Canada. Is that just people sign off, or where does the government sign it off, or can you just clarify that, please?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So we've signed off. We're just awaiting the ministerial sign off at the master then. So we were expecting it by the end of this week.
We're aware, and everything's tied up down here.
From our end, we're just waiting.
And the expectations, they sit on it for months or anything like that?
They've had it for nearly a month, but we're expecting it this week. We met with Conara at the end of last week, and it's due any day.
All good. Thanks for that.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Yeah.
One relates to the work of the Ministry for the Environment Economic Case Study. Talking about inviting regional councils to contribute case studies to support the development of New Zealand's management system. Could somebody elaborate on that? And specifically, the last sentence or paragraph on that says, Environment South and Case Study focuses on the complexity and economics associated with managing stream bank erosion and sediment. Can somebody explain that a bit more and tell me why that is important?
Thank you for the question, Council. So Ella Lawson and my team was approached by Ministry for the Environment to support them with a piece of work that they are endeavouring to undertake in the next couple of months. And so the assessment is pulling from a lot of the work that previously was undertaken by Environment South on this topic. They're looking at it from a range of non-regulatory interventions in terms of riparian areas and the proposal to advance a more direct guidance for people in that space. So before they leap to directing what that guidance might look like, they're undertaking this process and they're seeking feedback from a couple of regions. So we were one who was asked to assist.
Okay.
I can provide you with some more detail if you'd like, maybe through your weekly update.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you. The last question, Mr. Chairman, I note that one of the cruise ships was denied access to Fiordland. I assume this was for a biosecurity reason, and but there's no details there about that. And also, what implication does that have for future cruise ship visits? Is it putting people off, or is it just making sure that they are fully compliant?
I think it's a compliance issue, but I'll get Hayley, is this in your space, I think?
Yeah, I have no information.
We do have London online.
Lyndon's online.
Yeah. Perhaps Lyndon might want to answer this.
Is able to? Are you there, Lyndon?
Yes, good morning. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the cruise vessel that was restricted entry into Fiordland just recently through the MPI notification was related to biofouling that I'm aware of, and it's generally done a case-by-case basis. The information has gone out to the cruise industry, so they're all well aware of what their obligations are prior to coming into Fiordland. But this particular vessel is what they call a residency vessel, where it's not like a normal cruise ship where you have paying passengers on board. These are actually residents that own each cabin on this vessel. So it's a little bit of an anomaly when they come into New Zealand. They're unsure of different rules and regulations. So that would be probably one of the main reasons that MPI have actually issued a notice of direction, mainly because it's more of an awareness thing related to that ship.
Okay.
And provided they comply in the future, both say won't impact, provided they comply.
How do they know that they're not complying before they get here? Are they inspected in other ports or something?
They're through you again, Mr. Chair. They're inspected 48 hours. They have to submit notification through Biosecurity New Zealand, and they're also, that's part of their pre-arrival information. but checks are also done at the previous port as well.
Okay. No, thanks for that. No other questions. I'll move to receive the report. So you second that. All second and all in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Right, move to 10.2, are you doing this? Great South and Space Operations draft statements of intent. Lead away.
Yes, through Chair, I'll take this report as read, and note the letter on page 93 from Lee Campbell on behalf of the council. So happy to take any questions. It's a pretty much procedural matter.
Next. That's next. It's next. Sorry. I think we're all good.
Just a question, noting that there are two letters there. One is from Mayor Scott, which I think is the one that we approving in theory, and also the one on page 93. And this might be kind of historical, excuse me, but I'm wondering what the second last paragraph in that Mayor Campbell's letter about the geospatial data and delaying including that as a KPI. I just don't understand why that would have been necessary, and I'm wondering if somebody can give me some breakdown on.
As I understand it, Chair, it's about aligning our work programs and just ensuring there's no duplication. So
Duplication of data gathering?
All of those things.
I think there was a risk of the duplication side of things. So it's a bit more discussion needed.
Duplication across, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Duplication across the TAs or the duplication across Great South and us?
Great South.
Okay, interesting.
Any answers?
I think the conversations going on.
Yeah. Just trying to work together on all these things. So that's any other questions in regards to that?
I'm happy to.
Yeah, happy to move.
Yeah.
So I'm just going back to happy to receive, and I'm sorry, just going back to my paper. Recommendations. We'll receive the report, the Great South Space Operations draft statements of intent, receive the draft South statement of intent and draft Space Operations New Zealand statement of intent, and endorse the joint feedback letter recommended to the council. So we've got 1, 2, 3, we'll get them all done. You're happy to move those, Lyndall? Seconder, Dave, second that. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Right. Look forward to 10.3. We welcome it's a 6-monthly update from Great South, so welcome team.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing we'll see what's been going on.
Thank you, gentlemen. So,
You can have this.
Good morning, and thank you very, very much for giving us this opportunity to get in front of the new council. This is my, I think, is it my first time or maybe it's my second?
I think,
It seems like,
hopefully you know everyone or.
I think I do.
Yep, no, that's all good.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Appreciate the opportunity, like I mentioned. Highlight of my job is to actually be able to come in front of councils to, alongside my GM, my exec team, to update you on what we've been doing and also give you some insights into what we're working on going forward. This also enables us to have free and frank conversations. Obviously, if you've got any questions, just ask us directly and we're more than happy to provide some insights. And we were listening to some of the conversations, so Bobby may touch on some of that going forward. What we will do is we'll do a very quick overview of individual areas. Mark Frood is our GM for tourism and events, and he is an apology in person. However, he has recorded his slides, so you will hear from him, and hopefully next time I'll be able to bring him back, bring him into the meeting. So from a Great South point of view, we're very happy to have had some of our esteemed councillors around our workshop that we had on the 10th of February, which from an overview was that they endorsed what Great South is doing, and they endorsed us to progress those sort of initiatives that we've had. Our vision is to support even better lives for our communities through sustainable regional development, and that still rings true. So we're taking that forward for the next financial year. The councillors and our shareholders endorsed our priorities to remain in the 4 specific sort of areas. Regional development is really our regional strategies, the area that Bobby leads. Regional promotion for tourism and events is what Mark Frood leads. And business support diversification, the net zero Southland decarbonisation sort of pieces, Steve leads. And within that, there are the contracts that we hold with central government for regional business partner program, and of course, the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs for Southland District Council. So those 2 are specifically focusing on our workforce, capability building, and youth engagement in our new industries. So last year's KPIs, we've got 39 of them. Really happy to say that we're progressing really well. We've achieved some of the KPIs. And I think for the next cycle, we will be re-looking at how we present value against the different areas that we're doing, and looking at tying it more into an economic value outset. So, for example, in tourism and promotion, we kind of look at, the promotion of our region and what that looks at, but maybe we need to look at it from an economic point of view, as in what is the kind of economic benefit we get into our region. So we'll work with our councils and our shareholders to identify what they are, so that in the next long-term cycle, we probably will have a revised set of KPIs that we're working through. Some of the standout outcomes really is around that tourism promotion. We've had some significant deliveries, with 91% of our traffic coming from our key priority areas. We've had a lot of interest from external agencies coming to Southland and being taken on these familiars that showcase what we really have to offer, and they in turn then go and represent us in their individual markets. So what that really means is, like, we've been able to leverage around $750,000 worth of value, advertising value, by reaching about 18 million people across the world. And this translates into, higher value, more research sort of travelers coming into our region that align with our priorities. The job hub deliveries, those were around the Southland Youth Futures and the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. I'm going to leave this presentation, and Jan, I'm sure you'll be able to deliver it to your councillors. I've just done a quick snapshot of what we do and how it aligns with Environment Southland. So in essence, really, what we are doing is providing you with data and insights and information that will enable you to make better decisions. What we do is in association and in collaboration with our councils, and so Bobby in particular will talk more on that. We do have an MOU with Environment Southland that is looking at all of the data needs, and what we have done over the years, supporting the decision making that you have to make in this very volatile sort of environment. So I won't go into detail here, but of course we can leave that for you to disseminate at your leisure. I'll hand it over to Bobby now. Take it from here.
Okay, rightio, so I'll get straight into it. If you recall the Beyond 2025 plan, which was the next version of sorts, we talked a lot about diversification, and we had a whole lot of ideas around what that could look like, and the reality is a lot of it is coming to fruition, particularly of late. So what this map shows us is that there's a number of industry, some quite large scale, which you will be obviously aware of as a regulator, that are occurring. And what we've been more focused on through the planning was understanding the housing, energy, water, transport, roading, enabling kind of things that sometimes you don't see when you look at each of these individually. So there's a bit going on at the moment considering the scale, and there's a few things like the UHT plant in Edendale. It's all on track. It'll be open in August. We've obviously got the data grid and the subsea cable decision of late. You've got the Contact Energy, what is that, 16th of April, 19th of April, I think that final decision will be out. But also aquaculture as well, which is the next slide. So look, this is with the Hananui, with the panel commissioner appointing the panel, and there's more guidance around the time frame. 10th of August, we'll have an indication of where that will land. So that's triggered 3 things from us, having our role with aquaculture. There's an infrastructure project, which I'll talk about in a second. Comms and awareness, which is really about people starting to understand what it is. And there's a lot of not knowledge out there, to be honest. And remember, this is actually quite a new thing for New Zealand. The Blue Endeavour project is the only other open ocean farm that's in its early stages as well. So we're bringing in a new industry, which people don't understand. And the third thing is the workforce approach and understanding future skills that'll be required, automation, mechanisation, all of that, and then how we connect with SIT and on-the-ground training. So this is the infrastructure project I referred to. So this is in partnership with Invest New Zealand, MPI, Coin South and Great South. And the overall aim is to develop an integrated infrastructure supply chain and transport pathway to support the growth of an expanded sector. So what that means is if you have a large salmon farm come in with, there's only about 5,000 tonnes of salmon going across at the moment, but you get more coming. What's the order of things that need to happen from haul out, vessel cleaning facilities through to port side infrastructure, through to transport logistics, getting products to export. So there'll be different requirements. Some need to go before others. And then obviously there's a number of stakeholders who'll be involved at different parts of that supply chain. So in the next 4 months, we'll confirm that project will be complete. And the timing is short, but it's on purpose because we've got the Hananui decision, which obviously this will be an important part of that. But also there is our supply chain, our engineers are very busy because as you'll see, the rest of the region's quite busy. So, for them to get the workforce, invest in their business, to get a slice of this pie, there's going to need to be some security or some more surety around the timing. It's important to acknowledge the government partnership because it does show that they are interested in how we will deliver this at a regional level and acknowledging that this is relatively new as well. Housing, just a slide to say, look, with all these things that are happening, we've talked about housing challenges and they definitely haven't gone away. If anything, the housing challenges are needing to be addressed even more so with industry coming in, thinking of construction workforce, the need to house people and not displace locals. So it is a supply-demand situation. There's a whole lot underneath that. But I just probably wanted to mention, look, house prices are going up still, rents are going up while they have plateaued over the past year. There is still this growth, which is, due to a combination of things. And it is very tough financially for a lot of people, because what's happening is while your rent goes up and your house prices, your wage doesn't often go at the same level or pace. So their average household incomes have not increased at the pace of rents and house prices. So that's why this cost of living, people will be feeling the pinch. Okay, so you can look at the slide there. There's some comparisons between the councils, but it is a similar picture across the region. And my last slide is just talking about spatial planning and acknowledging your amazing staff. So Hayley and your team. Great South is supporting councils as they consider the implications of the RM reform and the possible requirement for a regional spatial plan. And just noting that the initial guidance that we've seen released does talk about things like energy, economic development, transport, alongside statutory requirements that the plan or the regional combined plan will have. So we're just making sure that lines up. And that leads to that second point, which talks about the data. As Charmy said, we've got an MOU between Environment Southland and Great South, which is specifically about how do we make sure we're using the same data, we're efficient with it, there's consistent interpretation, and there's quite a big list, Patrick, Karen. Yeah, we've got a wee bit there to go through, but it's a really positive step, and we really appreciate the partnership approach by your GMs. The third point is that we will continue to work with industry and wider stakeholders, and that's something that we provide the councils. Sometimes as a regulator, you maybe can't have the same relationships that we can, being one step removed, and we've got very good relationships with a lot of these new industries and existing business, which we can bring to the table and their insights, which is important. And then that final point is just talking about transport and other enablers and that continued focus. So we want to make sure these industries come in, that our businesses, our people get jobs and economic benefit from it. So that is going to require a lot of planning, because the scale of some of these things is quite significant, and they're going to happen relatively quickly too, looking at the timeframes. So there's a bit of work going on at the moment, trying to understand the timing, what is required, whereabouts, which of course will connect into the spatial planning. And of course, just acknowledging there's commercial sensitivities around that too. So, and it will change as consents get approved, and the ballpark keeps changing for these guys. That's it.
Thank you, Bobby.
Oh, sorry. Oh, poor old housing. Just to acknowledge that we are again trying to make the way we present data easier for councils to use. So we will be upgrading the housing dashboard, which will allow a split by territorial authority. So you can see housing values, number of consents gone through, all the information. And that's a shift from us to try to make the information more palatable for you guys and planners, as well as businesses and Joe Blogs who wants to shift to the region and work in one of our new industries.
Right. So we'll hear from Mark. We may not hear from Mark. How do I get the speaker volume up? Sorry.
Where's the boss?
Oh, so shall I come back to his slides and I'll get Steve? Okay. Right. Steve.
Yes, just, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come speak here today. I guess I'm GM Strategic Projects. I deal with the implementation of the large strategic initiatives within the region primarily. Big focus on energy-related activities, wind resources, solar, biomass fuels, crops, water, and air travel. I'll just touch on those because they're recent topics. A lot of these initiatives will be reports in their own right, two of which will be considered Great South Board next week and will be released for public consideration. But this is the main issue. I guess what, as a region, we're looking at decarbonisation and a decarbonisation pathway, simply because market access requires us to have climate-related disclosures. There's some very good news on that front. our region is leading New Zealand by a country mile in this particular area of activity. And I guess the renewable energy and decarbonisation are inextricably linked, so I'll touch on that. Now, just a little point, we're also doing quite a lot of travel survey relating to the Wellington direct flights. The result of that is that we've had around 2,500 submitters in that process. Of the businesses that submitted, they represent 12,000 employees, and we have early understanding of what the key issues are for travellers, and we've seen very substantial reduction in the number of connections between Invercargill and Wellington. That's very material. In Southland, it's 23,800 fuel seats, which has a very significant impact on our connectivity. So we're aiming to try and change that. Current fuel prices prevailing. So moving on. First of all, just in the energy landscape, what does this mean as a region? Well, as a region, we require 3,850 megawatts of energy coming into the region or available in the region. We currently use 1,850 megawatts of energy, so it's 2,000 megawatts of firmed energy. And that will come primarily from solar, wind, run-of-river hydro, which we'll be releasing a report on very shortly. Biomass, we have 220,000 tonnes of biomass fuels, but we need to move very quickly to around 840,000 tonnes, and that's to satisfy our decarbonised boilers and the need for biomass in that area. Biogenic methane, we've had a very substantial reduction in biogenic methane, primarily by capture and use of biogenic methane in the region, which is a positive action because it's a very challenging emission. And we're working on hydrogen activities, even though the major project, Southern Green Hydrogen, has gone into recess at this particular point. Just a key area is our solar energy and, this is wind resources maps. We've mapped the whole region. It's a geospatial mapping tool which shows all the transmission lines, all of the infrastructure right down to property level, but also identifies the commercial wind availability within the region. Currently, there's 9 quite large wind projects being considered in Southland at present, and of course they introduce intermittent energy into the region, but they introduce very important energy for the region. So this has been enabled by an earlier piece of work, which was really the Southern Renewables Energy Project, which strengthened all of the electricity lines in and out of Southland and also provided new grid exit points at key strategic locations. So I suppose it's a perfect storm in that sense. So these projects are moving at rapid pace. So our aim really here is to highlight the opportunities and where they may exist and where they may connect to existing infrastructure and existing demands. We've renewed now 110 boilers in the region, there's 69 still to be converted, and the major industries in the region are going through that process still to meet their export requirements. We had a solar event 3 weeks ago, 216 RSVPs. We had tremendous amount of interest from dairy farmers and other industry players across the board. There's around about 250 projects in this area at the moment, and very rapidly growing. Southland is the highest growth in solar of any region of the South Island, and one of the highest in New Zealand now. A very substantial change in the minds of many people since the October windstorm, and we're very lucky to have dairy farmers turn up to that event and present on their own experiences and able to communicate the fact that they continue to milk all the way through the power outages, and also to demonstrate that they have a return on investment of less than 5 years in some cases, but nominally 5 years, which is very positive. So we've been working with a lot of people and organisations seeking to convert to renewable energy as we speak. The other big part of it is our net emissions as a region. The good news is that our latest report will be considered by our board next week, but the regional emissions, net emissions have dropped by 23.6%, which is the highest reduction in New Zealand as a region, and very important for Southland because we are the third highest emitting region in New Zealand. And for understandably, one, because of our significant export production and so on. But across all areas of activity, we've seen very significant reduction overall. And the key target here, and you'll see from the report released next week, that we're on track to reach net zero by 2050 as a region without economic and social shock, by driving value from our exports and better decision making in terms of energy efficiency and low carbon production. So it is real and it is happening, and it's being led by all parts of our export sectors, including supply chain and including primary sector. So it's a very significant step forward as a region, and we'll be proud of that. Likewise, stock numbers do drive a lot of activities as a region, and of course we've seen, well, not of course, we've seen a reduction of sheep numbers of around 700,000 sheep. We've seen increases in dairy cows, 5,000, greater number of dairy cows. We've seen 19,000 increase in beef cattle, and we've seen significant reduction in fertiliser application, but that's starting to move upwards, and it indicates that people are feeling like investing back in their land. Our GDP has increased to 8.84 billion, and as we all know, there'll be windfall payouts from Anchor and mainland sales by Fonterra of around about 3.9 billion, which will be a windfall, won't be baked into the region, but it'll certainly, many farmers, in particular dairy farmers, are focusing on how they reduce their input costs. Some looking at paying down debt, and some are looking at new investment on their farms, which is very significant and has a positive impact for our region. With the development of aquaculture and potential scaling up of aquaculture in Southland, we felt it was a very important opportunity to look at a new form of aquafeed, and we've gone through in detail looking at the particular crops that would contribute to that. The peer review of that work has just came back last week, which has affirmed the desire and actions in this area, and we're engaging with farmers now interested in developing some of the more unusual crops, not those crops, lucerne, wheat obviously. White lupins is a new crop for Southland. Fava beans has been grown, but has to be grown in broadacre for an industry such as this. And potato crops, mainly for the starch, which is the glue that glues together aquafeed pellets. Camelina is a new crop for Southland, and the seed is very high omega seed. And some crops, such as purslane, is actually a wheat crop, but we'd see, if this proceeds, we'd see that grown as broadacre crop. So these changes are significant potentially for the region, and do provide a land use alternative for some cropping farmers in particular, but they also fit in as a pretty suitable rotation within most crops. A lot of them are nitrogen fixing crops to boot. So you'll see more about that in the next month, and this is another piece of work. We've already shared the material associated with this, but we have been commissioned independently to undertake a groundwater assessment of the Chatham Formation. That involved 496 borehole, digitising those boreholes and developing a geospatial model, a geological model of that system. And that now has moved on to the point where we're now being asked by MBIE to look at airborne survey, SkyTem airborne survey for the entire Southland aquifer systems, and that work will be shared with the in detail with the GS team, with the ES team over the coming weeks. But that will see a greater use of world leading technology to better utilise, to gain a better understanding of groundwater across the region, particularly deep groundwater, which is what this focus is. I guess that comes with it a whole lot of responsibilities, but essentially if a deep water system is developed in the region, we have to protect potential contamination, and we need to better understand how this all connects. Now, in that very poor map at the top there, you'll see AM survey North and South, and that was undertaken in 2021 via MB, and that work is now being assessed by Geoscience New Zealand, which is very positive, and the aim is to entirely cover the Mataura, Southern Plains and Western Southern areas to look at groundwater using precision tools, which the SkyTEM instruments are. So that's a little bit about that. Yeah, I don't know if there's any questions.
Or will Martin go ahead? Got
a question, and we've got one more.
Okay.
Sam, you'll be first up, John.
Yeah, so.
You need a voice.
Yeah, I'm fine, I'm going to my head now.
Yeah.
Frequent. Just get a mullet.
Just the way that's taken. I want to ask the question while we're waiting.
Well, you're far away, John, while we're waiting.
Thanks, Steve. It was great, and sorry I missed your solar day, but we're already halfway through putting up solar. Dairy sheds are probably scared and getting it wrong and didn't come along, but no, I was just busy. But there's certainly some uptake, and there's a lot of projects going on in that space, and it's fact that work on that was really impressive. So it'd be great to see that. I guess my question is, sorry, I didn't see anything about data centres or anything like that, and has that factored? Anything like that being factored by Great South, the fact that you bring in all the financial, return for Southland, pressure that puts on supply of power, is there any work that sits in there that's of any interest to council?
Oh, of course. Well, in the 2,000 megawatts of new firmed energy that's required, that involves the energy associated with electrification of transport, decarbonisation of very large boilers, new industry investment across the board. And in that new industry investment, there is provisions for some industries such as data centres. But it's really important to understand that some of these industries have to also stimulate direct investment in new renewable energy. And that's no exception. Data centres require a lot of energy, as do many of the industries that we are looking at decarbonising. So that's all that is counted within our energy strategy, and thankfully ES and 27 stakeholders, including Transpower and our large generators, were involved in that process. What we are seeing, however, which is really gratifying, is that large industries such as New Zealand aluminium smelters, for example, are looking at a different way of producing their anodes and so on, and we're working on how to weave that in, producing potentially another 200,000 tonnes of emissions. Just as a matter of interest, the smelter is no longer our largest single point of emissions within our region. The current largest emissions point source is actually Fonterra Edendale.
Kia ora, good morning. My name is.
And Fonterra Edendale are working.
Kia ora, good morning. My name is Mark Fruit.
Especially on the alternatives.
The sector I want to look at is vents. We've had fewer large-scale events across the region.
Sorry, I apologise. Got it working.
Can you get
okay. Sorry, Steve. Sorry. No problem. Sorry, Jim.
I dropped out of the Zoom. Oh, gee, sorry. I hit accept.
Will we go to Mark's? Have you finished?
I'll just say there's two things that are very important. Energy is important as a region. If we're the only region in New Zealand to have undertaken what we call energy in the landscape, which is looks at the physical attributes of our landscape where energy is practical without destroying a natural environment, preferably in modified landscapes, where you can do that in a way that can be easily connected to demand, which is a big cost in servicing demand. And the other area is water. Across the board, water comes across from industry and agriculture and processes and communities is the number one issue. So we've got to, I think, use more effectively the tools that are available to better understand how we might responsibly use that water and how we may also address some of the contamination in their surface aquifers in particular. So.
All good. Well,
Should I go ahead?
Yes. Push the button.
Kia ora, good morning. My name is Mark Fruit. I'm the GM Tourism and Events. I'm sorry I can't be with you this morning, but we have a Tourism New Zealand group here during the day and we're meeting with them, and it's an opportunity for us to talk deeper about Murihiku Southland and what we do that's extraordinary, and they go back and encourage their visitors to come and see us. So we're going to touch on regional promotion for the last quarter of last year, and I'll just touch on with guest nights continue to grow, and that's internationally and domestic. Fiordland is probably the standout in that, as we would expect with the strong visitor flows that are coming back into the country, but we're seeing it also across the rest of Southland as well, and that's part of one of the strategies that we're running, is to keep that international regional spread around our whole region. The good thing too is that domestic has been flat, but that's pretty good considering the domestic economy at the moment, and domestic travel is pretty flat everywhere else, if not down. We've also seen the corresponding growth in international spend, which is replacing the loss of domestic spend. The standout region, once again, is Fiordland, but we are seeing that across the region, which is fantastic. And I think the last time we looked at the statistics we're starting to get a 50-50 split between international spend and domestic spend. All this data sits on our DISH website, and the tourism quarterly report, which is where a lot of this information is coming from, is sitting there as well if you want to go and look deeper. Next area I want to look at is events. We've had fewer large-scale events across the region. Weather's played a big part in that, in terms of Tourist Southland, for instance, and that was shifted into 2026 into January, and we'll see the benefit in the next quarter from that being in the region at the time. Events are harder to keep happening. They're harder to resource, harder on costs, a lot costly to run events. So we've seen a natural decrease, and that's just something that's happened across the country as well. However, we're actively engaged in looking at what other events we can bring to the region, but also what new events can we get that tie in with our Southland story, and that could be around things like food, things that are naturally a natural fit for us to build and grow over time. Business events are down. That's really a reflection of the most business events that come to our region are domestic, and that's associations and alliances, and that's down, and that's just a reflection of the current domestic market environment. However, whilst we've had fewer events, the business delegates hosted, which is those that are here, those numbers have remained stable, which basically points to the fact we've had probably larger events, but over a shorter period of time. So the numbers have remained the same, which is positive, and shows that we have an offer that the sector is very much wanting to be part of. And the last slide I just wanted to concentrate on is our focus. So we've got a challenging global outlook, and we can't do anything around the influence of that, of course, but the areas we can influence, we continue to work hard in our domestic market around New Zealand and east coast of Australia, because they're actually two markets that now have presented another opportunity, because people are looking to defer long-haul travel to other destinations around the world and are looking to book and travel closer to home. We continue to drive regional spread through trade and training, and with various tours that come down through the region and the Southern Way collaboration. There's just a couple of examples on the screen in front of you there. That's one is the CCTV coverage of the region that this journalist came down and through that went to 85 million viewers around China, and obviously a reasonable size, and which is great. The other story is the Aussies love the Southern Way, and that's the story of the Spirits of Southland, which look at our brewers and beverage makers from across the region, of which we have a growing number, and a lot of stories in that food and beverage space is a huge opportunity for us. Promotion and supporting of events, we'll continue to do that. One of the areas we really want to look at improving is in event coordination, and that's mainly around the time events are held, just trying to ensure that we don't have things clash. And we do have a big one in 2028, Southern Field Days and the Burt Romo Challenge clash. And when we have clashes like this, is we lose economic opportunity for the region by spreading things out over a longer period of time. Both those events fill the town and the region, and other regions, to be honest, and when you've got them all at the same time, both the events lose opportunity, but the region loses opportunity as well. We just want to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. And we also look to be ensuring where the gaps are in events. And I think I mentioned previously, that's an opportunity for us to look at new events in the region at times that we need them. So thank you very much. As I mentioned, this is all available on Dish. If you look on the website and the tourism industry report, that's there for the quarter, and any questions and things, please file them through and I'll answer them for you. Thank you very much.
That's our presentation, Chair.
Thank you. I've got a couple of quick questions, and Linda. I had one, 23% reduction since 2018 in emissions. How does that compare? Has other regions done that, or how does that compare? We're obviously pretty well over all that.
We're the only region with an energy strategy, it's the fifth energy strategy, a net zero plan, which is actually based on industry desires to reduce. It's an industry-based plan. We're going through that now, refining that significantly. We're working primarily with the largest emission sources to ensure that their plans are woven into this plan, and that our actions help them to advance their initiatives, which is really good. And we will have that released in June, and that will set forth further footprint, greater accuracy, greater time series data that's built into that, and a credible track record of achievement.
No, it's good. And just another one, how was your groundwater investigations funded?
It was funded by a private sector investment, and for New Zealand and one international company, and that was undertaken in-house, and has used leapfrog modelling for volumetric assessment of volumes in the Chatham Formation. But the SkyTeam workers are out connectivity and continuity through that system, and the release of the Waimea Plains data will provide significant insight into how this water system connects from the Waimea and north and south through to Aotearoa, Ashes there to Aotearoa area, Cargill and Byron's and Gore.
It's privately funded, but the information is publicly.
Yes, what we aim to do with all of the work, the seabed bathymetry is a good example, and Torres Strait coastal work, which was privately funded. We aim to have that released for public release, and we were able to negotiate the release of this work for public use, and we released this to Environment South last year. It's just taken another step forward in terms of refinement and precision.
That's great.
Thanks, Chair. Pleased that the electrification numbers are increasing all the time.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my question about the very possible fuel shortages.
Very possible.
I'm just wondering, because obviously even getting here will be a challenge. It's already a challenge. having paid $450 to fly from Christchurch to Invercargill. Unreasonable. Just wondering what thought you've given to supporting business and industry if there's fuel challenges, and also on the public transport front, especially within the city, encouraging, an alternative model so that people can still get to work.
Look, it is a fossil fuel. We're at the end of a supply chain. We're a price taker. We have to basically deal with the price as the market prevails. We're highly dependent on diesel, in particular in the heavy transport sectors. We're highly exposed in that area. Road transport is significant for Southland, very significant for Southland. So the question really is, what are the alternatives going forward? There's obviously alternatives going forward. Can they be implemented in the short term? No. It's quite a significant step change. But I guess what we'll do is highlight our fragility as a country and as a region, and probably highlight the importance of the need to develop alternatives and to become, as a country, more fuel independent. As a country, we have a tremendous amount of potential for renewable energy, for example. The ability to convert that to hydrogen for fuel cell vehicles or co-fueled vehicles is very, very high. But we need very strong strategic leadership to enable that to happen. All of the leadership that's been provided in this area is from companies like Obayashi and Japanese companies that are working in the Central North Island and others, and locally through the HWR group, which is highly exposed as a transport fuel transporter as well as a very large consumer of transport fuel. So yes, it is a tricky time. As far as public transport goes, it's not really in our wheelhouse per se, although alternative transport is. So cycling, walking, public transport should be the first step when people are challenged. And obviously some promotion and marketing around that would be pretty helpful, I would say, going through the process here.
Thanks for that. Paul and Ewan, and we might move on.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I was really interested in the 9 Hydro on River project. Number you had there, because I have asked a very large generator if there was any other projects they've been involved in, and the response was no.
Right. I don't know what generators you've asked, and that's fair enough, but the reality is that we are aware of 2 quite large projects that are being considered by a major generator in New Zealand. I guess what we trying to portray in our geospatial work is that we can get run-of-river based generation from run-of-river, as opposed to flooding a whole lot of farmland or orchard land or developed lands. And the opportunities exist in the Upper Clutha. In particular, there's 3 opportunities in the Upper Clutha and 3 in the Lower Clutha, not all of which would be developed, but could be developed here. So Dumbarton, Rock, Beaumont, and to pick them out, no surprises there. They have been on the books previously, and in the upper Hawea Wanaka Tunnel project, the downstream from the control structure at Hawea, and the possibility of Queensberry Luggett, probably not, but the reality is that you might say, why was Southland interested in that? Well, any new generation in the Lower South Island is readily available for our consumers and industries in the South Island. They have a distinct advantage because of the short transmission lines. The cost of transmission pricing methodology gives them a benefit. Consumption close to generation is the first step in this process. So yes, you have to say sometimes you have to highlight some opportunities to stimulate some action, do some research, thank you.
Yeah.
No, well, look, we're more than happy to share the work, there's no question about that.
One more question, Leon.
Guys, and it's, I suppose it's a wee bit of a, wee bit different, but so having listened to the presentation you had back at ESCOT a few weeks ago, and then presentation today, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of challenges. So what do you see, I suppose, my question is, what do you see your role in actually bringing that to a plan for Southland rather than actually our organisations operating in individual spaces? What is that? And it might be for you, Charlene, to be fair. What does that look like?
So yeah, one of our main roles is that advocacy piece and bringing everything, all the different moving parts together. What we want to do is to, with the work that we did through Beyond 2025, understand what is our pathway forward, map that out over the next few years, be it 5 years, 10 years, with the inputs from our councils and our shareholders to understand what the moving parts are. So like you rightfully identified and what Bobby spoke to earlier is when do we need what? How are we going to get there? Is that a part that we need to play, or who is the lead that needs to drive that? So for example, workforce is not what we would do through aquaculture, let's say, but it is enabling SIT and Marika Region and, all of the various other players that may be in that spot, including Southland Youth Futures and NEAS Task Force, which also know that how do they bring it in, but may not necessarily lead that. So that is the next piece of work that we'll be working on now that we have direction from our shareholders that they want us to continue with this. Identifying at the workshop that space operations and workforce development are two other areas that needed a key focus for our region for the next 10 years. So really bringing all of that together is our next piece of work.
I think I can't think of any work that we're doing that isn't a regional plan. Decarbonisation, climate change, net zero regional plans, energy strategy, America Southland Energy Strategy is a regional plan. The work we'll be doing in transport areas, all regional plan activities. So yes, I think the main thing is that as a region, probably more than ever, we have to focus on achieving together the outcomes that will make this place work well, not only from an economic community perspective, but also an environmental perspective. And if these plans are woven together, we can achieve that.
Look, it's always good hearing what's going on, and we're certainly highly supportive of Great South and the work they do. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you very much.
And presenting that. So I'll recommend receive those reports in the presentation. John seconded, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Move on to 10.4, appointment to the Southland Community Broadcasters Trust. Amy.
Chairman, just while Amy's coming up, I didn't declare a particular interest at the beginning because it's in the register, but obviously there's a connection between me and the Southland Community Broadcasters Trust.
Could you relate that? Amy?
Sure, good morning. This is a broadly administrative matter. Council previously reflected a desire to review its appointment that it had made to the Southland Community Broadcasters Charitable Trust. The trust allows for a staff member or a councillor to be a trust member. Previously, Council had decided to appoint Councillor Phil Morrison as its representative. But there is now a desire to review that decision and to appoint a staff member, specifically the General Manager of Community Engagement, to act as a representative instead. So the recommendation just steps through the process to amend or revoke that appointment and to make a new appointment.
Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward. No any questions?
I'll move recommendations 1 to 4.
And option 1.
Hang on. Lyndall,
Sorry, Chair, I'm just wondering if we should, given the changes to titles that we quite often make at council, whether personnel in the title, we should appoint the General Manager Community and Engagement rather than name Sam Frosterstead specifically. Would that be less likely to need a change in the future?
Not saying you're going anywhere, Sam.
Yeah, just in
Letter in the
case.
mail, sorry. But it actually keeps process, I mean. if-
Yep,
if
yeah,
people
no, I
move
do.
on or
provide
change
continuity.
position.
Yes, we can just.
So we don't have to
Just
revisit it.
that
So
position.
recommendation number 3 just would then be amended to read, appoint general manager, the general manager community engagement as council's representative in accordance with trustee.
Future proof.
Is that element legally done with the trust? Is what I'm saying, the fact that you're nominating
But-
position rather
yes,
than a
but-
person's name.
Yeah, but the person's name isn't specified in the trustee anyway.
So if everybody's, you're happy,
I'll
you've moved the
move the amended 3 and 1, 2 and 4.
1, 2 and 4. Second, Phil, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carry.
Do I need to abstain, Jim?
I think right, we'll move on to the local government statement.
Megan, hello. Look, this is just a compliance matter to let you know that one of council's statutory obligations after its new triennium, so under section 40 of the Local Government Act, is to prepare and make available local government's statement. It appears on our webpage. It basically just talks through how we're structured, what the purpose of local government is. It's broadly, there are some bits that need minor editing and tweaking just to reflect the appointments and the changes that council elected to make around its structure. But this really is just to let you know it's there. You to go and have a look at it if you would like, and that we have met our statutory duty. So for noting.
Pretty straightforward, I think. No questions. Lyndall moves it. Anybody second it? Phil, second it. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Yes, carry. The process regarding AGM, local government New Zealand and remit process.
So me again, third time lucky, yes. Look, this is, we've, as some of you might be aware, local government meets around about July every year and discusses remits and matters of policy that it wishes to approach on behalf of the sector during the year. This is council's opportunity to raise any matters that it would like local government New Zealand to consider as a remit. On page 102, which is the attachment, you'll see that the criteria for remits, there's 4 criteria there. The issue's got to be relevant to local government as a whole. It's got to be substantive in terms of a policy matter for the sector, that it can't be a matter that could be addressed through channels other than the AGM, and that it's not a matter of consideration. So what then happens is we submit that information through to LGNZ. They will come back to us at a subsequent point with, here are all the matters that we have determined we wish to talk about at LGNZ, and then we talk about how you want to vote on those. So that's subsequent. This is just at the early stages of, is there anything that is on your mind that you would like to raise as a matter?
Just Lyndall, yes.
Thank you. Just to hold on the back of the Great South presentation, this came to mind when I was reading through the papers. And this might be completely the wrong space for it, but I'm wondering if there's a way that we should be asking, seeking LGNZ's input into interregional transport somehow, because the regions are challenged on a good day, specifically by Air New Zealand, for access, and therefore economic benefit or not. So I'm just wondering if there's a place in this process for that kind of a discussion or advocacy from LGNZ and on that front, because we're not the only region who suffer, cargo and person transport issues.
It is a problem, well, certainly.
Yeah, but I don't know whether this is the best avenue or.
What's your thoughts?
Well, this is an advocacy thing, you'd be encouraging advocacy. I mean, it's something that the Southern, the South Island Regional, what do they call themselves, the South, the Alliance.
Yeah.
It's something to be interested in. Certainly it's something worth exploring.
If I might sort of build upon that concept, and I was wondering if there was a particular position paper that might be valid or a remit proposed around establishing a long-term Crown and local government co-investment framework for climate adaptation and resilience infrastructure. Because that would not only speak to potential opportunities around resilient transport networks and solutions, but other climate-related resilience and adaptation opportunities. We do have, we are very familiar with the Kanoa system as it's currently operated, but it seems that every tranche there's a need to renegotiate and understand and anticipate, because it's a suspensory loan, whatever. So, maybe establishing a more enduring and predictable system could be something that LGNZ advocates for on behalf of all of local government. Potentially, I can contribute some thoughts to how that might be.
I'm not suggesting that air travel is the only way, right?
Yeah.
And that would.
So we're comfortable in regards to that. Is there any other? Yeah. So you've got a bit of an indication.
Yep.
Um,
So I've captured that. It's exploring a Crown co-investment framework for resilient infrastructure, which includes transportation and others, with a focus on having a more enduring
For
system.
climate adaptation and resilience infrastructure, recognising the national significance of locally delivered risk reduction.
Really necessary. So if that's the only point, that sort of covers.
And we'll go away and shape up a position paper to come back to you within the appropriate timeframe.
Yeah, there's number 3 says here. So I'll move the recommendations 1, 2, and 3 in regards to that and the feedback. So we want to second that. Linda will second that. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Next, carried. Move on to meeting schedule. Council meeting schedule. And lots and lots. To
I noticed there's a couple of council liaisons that aren't in our email.
Went in the list at the time because they hadn't been
Tiana
finalised.
and Evelyn, I think. So, lovely to get started.
They are being set up. It's the date and the venue.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Is there anything else there that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention the High Country Field Day at Glen it's down as the time of 7 p.m. Sorry, Jen, just a small thing at 7 a.m. Yeah,
7 a.m. That's a bit early.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time to turn up and register.
No, that's all good. Any others?
Change to the next regional climate change working group meeting.
That came through yesterday, yes.
Okay.
I'm dependent on fuel supply, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. There's horses.
Yeah, we'll all be piling into your
We've got
car.
an electric
That's right.
car in July. Well, give it a go. There's a challenge. We challenge you. Proves it.
Make a great press statement after you've done it.
That's all good. So you're all happy with that?
Yeah, I'll move.
Okay, Linda will move, David, second, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, common seal. I know you're quick, got the two before even turn the page. It's the recommendation for the documents, common seal, we've got to move it from here. Paul, second it, put that, aye, against, carried. Right, we'll move into extraordinary, oh no, there's no extraordinary or urgent business. And we'll move into public disclosure PX, please, for the reasons being.
The reasons being set out on the last page of your agenda, and it's the confirmation of public excluded minutes of the ordinary meeting of council on the 9th of February, the extraordinary meeting of council had on the 18th of February, and for the adoption of committee resolutions from the Chief Executive's Review Committee meeting of the 4th of March. To maintain legal professional privilege, to protect the privacy of natural persons for the reasons for going into public exclusion.
Okay, mover, Eric.
I'll second.
Sorry, Eric and Paul second it, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Just switch off. Get your laptop.
Good afternoon, councillors. Thanks very much for your time this afternoon. The purpose of this workshop is really twofold. Firstly is to update you on the status of the Otahu Seafoods Hananui Aquaculture Project. And the second and important part of this is to seek your feedback on the proposed approach we're intending to take to providing comments on the application through the substantive comments in the fast track process. I've got about 8 slides, trying not to kill you to death by PowerPoint, and I'll move through reasonably quickly. The meaty part of it's probably the last couple of slides where we talk about the proposed approach, but there's half a dozen slides or so just to refresh your memory on the project itself, or to introduce it for those of you that haven't been involved previously. So the project itself, I'm sure most of you are probably fairly familiar with it, but there's a picture of Rakiura, and slightly hard to see, but up in the northeast corner there's a little arrow that points to the location of the site. The area of the proposed marine farm is 1,285 hectares. So put that in context, I guess you'd say that's about size of about 5 to 6 average farms in Southland, and proposed to be located ranging from 2 to 6 kilometres off the coast of Rakiura. If you're familiar with Rakiura, you'll be aware that that part of the coast is part of the Rakiura National Park, and the Northwest Circuit runs around past there. I think the huts are between Port William and Bungaree, or Christmas Village from memory, having done it years ago. There's proposing 4 farm sites, looking at the bottom slide there, and each farm has effectively, there's 2 stages, 10 pens in each stage, and moving from discharge of feed, obviously the salmon are fed through feed barges, and stage 1 involves about 15,000 tonnes per annum of feed discharge, and stage 2 moves through, at full operation, it's around 25,000 tonnes per annum of feeding that would occur into the finfish farm. Associated with that is the movements that go with that of vessels to and from the farm. There's a couple of feed barges, which I'll show you in a minute, and obviously associated movements for navigational purposes and transport of staff, all that sort of thing. Estimated from Otahu Seafood around about 415 to 480 ongoing jobs proposed through this project. And we were on a session yesterday with the applicant and the EPA, and the Chief Executive of Otahu Seafood was part of that, and indicated that their intention is that the bulk of those jobs will land locally at Bluff. So we're quoting him on that. I'm not making that up myself, but that was certainly the intention as stated yesterday. Again, a bit of gestation on this project, probably the right-hand side, a few pictures there. The top 2 are the feed barges themselves. Second one down, a wee bit hard to see, but it's sort of a graphic of the open ocean pens. They range from obviously a depth of about 16 metres below water level up to water level itself, and actually partly projecting above the water level, as you can see in that bottom slide. So 16 to 20 metres depth below the water in the structures themselves. Originally lodged with us as an Environment Southland consent application back in 2019. That predates my arrival here, but Lacey was heavily involved with that. I'm not sure if you want to add to that. Okay. So it got into our system. We initially commissioned some review processes, but then it was subsequently withdrawn by Otahu and lodged through the old COVID-19 fast track legislation, and went through an EPA panel process. We submitted on that, or commented on it last time around. Some of you will remember that. And generally the comment was supportive, subject to some provisos around some of the key environmental effects. So where the panel got to with this was interesting. The consent was eventually declined, and the panel that made that decision was particularly concerned about some ecological effects and landscape effects as well. So that's where the essence of a pretty large decision was. Subsequent to that, Otahu appealed that decision and to the High Court, and they have also prepared and lodged a new application under the Fast Track Approvals Act. It was a listed project under that Act, and once their application was accepted by the EPA, in other words, the current application that we're dealing with was accepted, they withdrew their High Court appeal. So we're now into the EPA fast track substantive process, which moves quite quickly.
Just on that, when it was declined, was there an indication like that the applicant was told to maybe scale down a bit, or like just that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm getting to that. There have been some changes made. So, absolutely. So, yeah, I'll move perhaps to the next one. So now we have the EPA has appointed a 3-person panel to decide the application. King's Counsel, a marine ecological specialist, and Stephen Daish was the combined nominee of Southland District Council and ourselves. Stephen's a very experienced resource management commissioner, and he was also a Bluff boy. He grew up in Bluff, so he knows the area pretty well. What's intended to happen with the current timetable is that the parties, including ourselves, would have an opportunity to comment from 30th of March to 30th of April. So a key purpose, as I indicated earlier, of this session is really to seek your feedback on those comments. We don't want to be doctoring up just at staff level. It's really important that you have the opportunity to feed into this, and our delegations require that the final comment be signed off by yourself before it goes to the EPA. So really, the essence of this is to sense check the direction of travel. A couple of other things I'd also highlight about the project are that if this is approved, Ngāi Tahu proposed to set up 4 different community funds for various purposes, which are effectively funded from the revenue generated, which is not that dissimilar to what Contact Energy is proposing with their current project. I'll sort of talk a little bit about those changes that Councillor McPhail queried. As indicated, the panel's previous decision highlighted some key areas of concern, and credit to the applicant, they haven't just tried to ignore all that and re-lodge their previous application. They've made some quite significant changes. I'll just sort of talk you through those a little bit. Previously, the location was going to be within 1.5 kilometres of the coastline. They've moved that out to between 2 and 6 kilometres offshore. So can't really see it all that well there, but that's a bit of a snippet of the coastline looking out from sort of that Port William area towards where the marine farm would be, which is, if you're familiar with that area, it's pretty pristine sort of coastal environment, but they're moving it out significantly further than previously. We've scaled back the area from the original 2,500 hectares to 1,285 hectares, so effectively half the area. And they've also changed the pen design. Previously, it was a more rigid 2-layer design, which had some concerns from an ecological entrapment entanglement perspective. So they've changed that aspect, and they've also changed the mesh dimension, in other words, how big the gaps are. So the gaps have been reduced in size to 40 mil, which is sort of about that, which reduces the potential for entanglement of some of these species that frequent that area. So credit to them, they have actually taken on board the previous decision and modified the proposal accordingly, rather than just saying, well, we didn't like that decision, we'll just lodge it again and hope for the best next time around. So there have been some pretty important changes made. Just moving on, feel free to stop me if I'm waffling or skipping over something. In terms of the application itself, it's about 3,000 pages plus of information. If you want to, you can go and look on the EPA website. The actual application itself is about 270 pages, but there's 15 different supporting technical reports, which brings it up to a big volume of material. So the applicant has really invested a lot in the technical support for this application. We've had good ongoing dialogue with Ngāi Tahu Seafood throughout the 5 years plus that this has been going, in the current application and the previous one. And they've been quite receptive to the feedback that we've given them. So been a pretty good applicant to deal with. And based on some feedback I hear from around the country with fast track applications, that experience can be quite variable, but this one has been positive for us. And also with other Contact fast track that we've had a pretty good liaison with applicants, but I understand that's not necessarily always the case. We have an important role here in terms of scrutinising the application. So it raises some issues that we don't have a lot of in-house expertise in. If you're generally familiar with marine farming, offshore marine farms in New Zealand, the main base for marine farming in New Zealand is the Marlborough Sounds, but we've had small scale marine farming in Victoria for a long time now, Victoria, Patterson Inlet, Rakiura. But open ocean offshore aquaculture is much more established in the likes of Tasmania and Norway, and to some extent off the west coast of Scotland. So the technology is not that new in international context, but it's pretty new here. The only other consented facility at the moment is the Blue Endeavour facility that King Salmon got consented a couple of years ago in Cook Strait, but hasn't been built as yet. So while the technology is reasonably proven internationally, it's pretty new in the New Zealand context. And so our scrutiny of this is really important from an environmental perspective. So because it raises some issues that we don't have in-house expertise for, we did engage external reviews, particularly a guy called Dr. Nigel Keeley, who's a specialist in aquaculture from a science perspective. So he's done quite a bit of review for us around the feed distribution effects and water column effects, etc., which we just don't have in-house expertise for. And the benthic community effects there is under the water, there's marine ecology on the seafloor at varying degrees of density and significance. So he was looking at those issues as well. Lacey was involved in that dialogue. Do you want to add to that?
I think I would just add that we took the opportunity to have Dr. Kelly involved at a point prior to the lodgement of the application. So it was all in line to influence, especially what we needed out of our reviews, what would actually go into the application itself. So it's all sort of aligned in that sense to be lodged. So whilst we can, provide that lens, that technical lens through our commentary, the applicant was very receptive, as Bruce said, to adapting the application to ensure that it met our needs prior to lodging. That makes sense. And it was an efficiency thing, especially with regard to fast tracking it moving so quickly.
Thanks, Lucy. Just in terms of where this facility is proposed to be located, there was a lot of research done by Ngāi Tahu trying to balance a whole lot of competing issues, if you like, or important issues, not necessarily competing. And to sort of run you through some of those, water depth obviously is a factor, and tidal flow is a factor as well. Sensitive habitat, sea lion breeding, wave height, and frequency of storm events. An important element was navigational safety and recognising existing occupancies, existing activities in that area, and currents, and also some community feedback that they had through community workshops on Rakiura. So they landed on that location balancing a whole lot of different factors. And one of their functions, obviously, things we've looked at is the effects on navigational safety. And Lyndon and his team, I'm not sure if he's online, Lyndon's been a bit unwell, he did join this morning, but I'm surprised if he's not. But he's been heavily involved in looking at the impacts from a navigational safety perspective, because you've got these offshore pens that aren't there currently. Ngāi Tahu had done some very detailed mapping of navigational history in the area, and they had a couple of maps which had like more lines than my face. There was just lines everywhere. And so they also used that navigational history and plotting to work out where to put these things. So as far as we're aware, there's no significant navigational concerns, and Lyndon hasn't flagged anything of particular concern. So location-wise, while it is quite close to Rakiura and close to a national park, other than that, the navigational aspects seem to be pretty well available. So moving on, probably the guts of this presentation really is, I'm sure you're probably aware of this document, the Murihiku Southern Aquaculture Pathway. I know some of you went to the launch that Great South held last year, really good event, and they've won an award for this document. The Hananui project is listed in this pathway document as a key project for aquaculture in Murihiku. So the proposed approach, subject to your feedback, is to generally support the project, but with appropriate conditions to ensure that it's environmentally sustainable. And that's really important. While we want an agriculture industry that can create social economic benefit, it shouldn't be at the expense of the environment either. So trying to make sure that those checks and balances in the system are in place. So we are intending to highlight to the panel the importance of this project in terms of the aquaculture pathway and the southern aspirations for growing industry. And also recognise this is a real flagship project for Ngāi Tahu, and Aaron Endicott, who's the CE for Ngāi Tahu Seafood, spoke about that yesterday to the panel, and he did a really good job, I thought, and outlined the linkages to the settlement and to Te Tiriti and Rangatiratanga and the future aspirations for Ngāi Tahu whānui. So I think with our partnership with Ngāi Tahu, it's important that we recognise that. Second part, however, though, is as an environmental regulator and also an entity that would be the recipient of whatever decision the panel makes, it's really important that we make sure that there's appropriate conditions for environmental sustainability. And we are involving our resource management compliance team, Donna's team, mainly through Kieran Thayer and Bruce Williamson. Looking at the draft conditions, they've given us good visibility on those. Generally speaking, they look pretty okay. But the panel could choose to tweak those or change them. That's entirely the panel's prerogative. And they do include a lot of conditions on some of the key stuff that we would focus on. So we're having a really good look at those conditions. And in the final draft comments that we bring through to you, if there's any particular concerns we've got, we would intend to flag those in those draft comments. And one other thing, it hasn't been all beer and skittles for offshore marine farming in some parts of the world. There's been damage through storm events and things like that, and sometimes they just haven't worked economically. So the other thing we will be flagging in that respect is that if, for whatever reason, the project either was significantly damaged or ceased to exist and had to be withdrawn from that area, then the consent holder or the applicant, whoever you want to call it, picks up the tab for that, and that the environment and our communities don't get left with any residual nastiness at the end of that. And that's really pretty important in what is a pretty pristine environment. And, as has been highlighted, there's a wee bit of coverage for it recently, and I think the heading was Fish Farm Moves into Uncharted Waters or something like that, bit of a pun. But it is a bit of a groundbreaking thing for Rakiura in particular, but for Murihiku, we don't have 20 others of these, and by comparison with maybe the Contact Energy wind farm fast track that we've just gone through, that's a big project, but you can point to 30 or 40 other wind farm projects at varying scales around New Zealand. So it's a slightly well-trodden pathway. This is reasonably groundbreaking stuff, so it's important that we're involved in the process. Sorry.
Look, it is good to see that you could argue that some of the other aquafarming got going on was just a bit of out of sight, out of mind attitude, and it is good that this is sort of
very visible,
and Short Island's got an exciting future, I think, if they can get the solar stuff right, which I think is a big question over that, but if they can get it right, can become quite a destination, Short Island, and this just adds to part of the employment over there, doesn't it?
Natural current in the area, is that east-west or west-east? And the reason for the question is, has there been some work done on likely impact to oyster fishery and the fecal matters?
I think it's already been done, mate.
What?
I think oyster fishery is already done.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a really good question. We had some modelling on that yesterday. They've done heaps of modelling on it through Forthright Institute and a few others. And yeah, you're right. The prevailing current, obviously varies a bit, seems to be from a northwest to southeast direction, and they've modelled the feed distribution in that area, and also modelled whether you could potentially get drift of the feed into the more sheltered bays around there, like Port William, which is a historic anchorage. And generally speaking, the effects beyond the actual envelope of the marine farm itself are very minor, but there's and the effects within the marine farm are manageable. So they've done a heap of modelling on that. But the ecologist that's on the panel was asking some pretty probing and clearly very knowledgeable questions around it. So it wouldn't surprise me if through this process I get a heap more questions from the panel on that particular aspect. It is important because you're feeding a lot of 15 to 25,000 tonnes of material into that environment, which doesn't exist at the moment, and hopefully the fish eat most of it. But if you look at other marine farms around New Zealand, around the world, there's always some residual material, and managing what happens to that's important.
Well, if you're looking at what happened in Victoria Bay, when they put the oysters in there, their growth rate exceeded the wild fishery out.
Yeah.
And the rationale for that, whether it's right or not, was that the fecal matter from the salmon farms was actually facilitating growth rates in the oysters. And there could be a positive impact, but I'm not sure if the data would substantiate that.
Yeah, no, there was one of the experts from the applicant yesterday said something similar, is that if there is some residual effect that's managed right, it can actually have some positive effect on some of the environment, provided it's not too much. But other interesting points are probably going maybe a bit too much detail here, but this project is quite complicated in terms of the various approvals it needs. It needs obviously consent from Environment Southland, but it also needs biosecurity approvals from MPI, Ministry of Fisheries, Department of Conservation, Wildlife Act approvals. And those scrutiny around the seabirds and marine mammals and shark effects are really important elements. The applicant has covered that in their own assessments, but we'll certainly be looking at that pretty closely and liaising with DOC as well, because we don't have a lot of in-house expertise in those areas. So I'm keen to ascertain exactly what DOC's position is on those.
Eric, you got one?
Yeah, I've got another one if I can. So I'm presuming that species will be salmon, but the application is it totally isolated to salmon because if something else later on becomes a viable aquaculture opportunity, is that going to be covered in a multi-purpose, or is it just specifically salmon?
Yeah, specifically salmon at this point in time. I guess if you get a suite of conditions, it will be over to the panel whether they choose to make it specific to salmon. But there'd be some different effects depending on if there was some other ability in the future to raise something else in that environment. It could have different feed requirements and all the rest of it. So I don't know exactly, but I would suspect that the final decision would be pretty specific to what's been applied.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, Morris.
I've got a question or a comment about sea temperatures. Salmon do best at temperatures between 8 and 14 degrees, and the current temperature of Foveaux Strait is about 15 degrees. This is probably the highest temperature for the time of the year. So it seems to me that there's a bit of a risk, especially with ongoing climate change and sea and ocean warming, that it might not become viable in the future, and they might need to change species, as you suggest, or move away. I don't suppose it's something that you can comment on, really. It's up to the applicant to do that, but there could be a reason why it doesn't become viable, maybe in 10, 15 years, because the growth of the salmon will be suboptimal, and the economics of the whole system might not work that well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And some other entities, King Salmon, for example, have been quite public about the fact that some of their existing operations that are further north are suffering from climate change. In other words, the water's got too hot, and their returns are less because the water temperature is rising, so the salmon don't do as well as they do in a colder climate. So, very good point, and probably another reason why that last point there is quite important about if for whatever reason it doesn't work, then there's some protection there, if you like, for our environment and our communities. And it is, somewhat of a flagship project for this. There's other interest from other players, I won't name them specifically, around doing similar things. I suspect they'll be watching to see how this one goes. But certainly your point about water temperature is important, both in terms of why it might be attractive to come to Southland, but also why it's becoming maybe less attractive to be in some other parts of the world.
Well, that particular area, of course, gets, like you say, the current comes from the northwest to the southeast because it comes down the Fiordland coast and around. And, they caught tuna and kingfish in Foveaux Strait, which is a sign of warmer waters. So, maybe they might need to farm kingfish in the future.
Lyndall, Phil, and John.
I think Phil was first, actually.
A couple of points I was just going to observe where other industries have taken livestock, and I'll use livestock pretty generically. They've been able to benefit from investment in genetics to find particular strains of animals that do better under certain conditions. That could be a potential with even the temperature changes. I'm not discounting that in the future. My question was around we heard from Great South this morning around their study into what are the other logistics and supporting and enabling things needed to make aquaculture successful in South. And I was kind of curious, does this likely to trigger other things, other investments, other development, or does it intersect with other planned investments? And I'm just imagining someone trying to lay a big internet cable coming ashore at Reedy Beach or something and running through the Fogo Strait and who put this bloody fish farm?
There's a fish.
What is there a sense for some of the associated or connecting or intersecting projects that this connects with?
Yes. You've got from Matayo Seafood talked a little bit about that yesterday, and in terms of land-based facilities, they would need a processing plant, which he indicated, it's not online yet, but I think it will be, in the order of $15 to $20 million land-based investment. But, you know, if the industry develops more broadly in the future, then it could give rise to the need for things like more biosecurity cleaning facilities for vessels and that sort of thing, which is already a project you've talked about previously here. That type of infrastructure. Another interesting point, which you're possibly aware of, is we, on the listed projects for under fast track, is a land-based aquaculture facility just west of the Ocean Beach Freezing Works site. Hasn't made it into the application process itself yet, but it's a listed project. So there's quite a lot of interest and a lot potentially happening in that space, and arguably there need to be some infrastructural upgrading happening around the current bluff infrastructure to support a large-scale aquaculture industry.
Assuming that is.
Yeah, there's another point Lacey could talk about it, but Mr. Endicott spoke about a hatchery arrangement they might need to.
Right.
Yeah, so do you want to?
Oh, no, just to mention that was
Is that a
just an addition.
shore-based facility? A hatchery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether he's talking about the same thing or not, but also as a listed project, so this is public information, Sanford has a listed project proposed for the Makariro Coastal site as a salmon hatchery, which hasn't made it to a formal application as yet. Tahu own, I think, about 19.8% of Sanford at the moment. So there could be a link there. I can't quantify it.
So I guess the follow-on question was for those other associated developments. Are they something that we are kind of more familiar with? I mean, I imagine a fish processing plant is like a small freezing works, but for fish rather than sheep or cattle.
Yeah.
Is that something that we'll be more able to respond to without?
Yeah, probably the inputs and outputs are a little bit easier to detect because you've got a few less variables than you do in a natural environment. But one of the things that could be raised is the adequacy of Bluff's infrastructure around water supply and sewage discharges and things like that. So there's sort of a broader discussion around that. I think Great South and Bobby probably talked to you about this morning, so I can hear that. But yeah, certainly there's some immediate infrastructure proposed by Ngāi Tahu on land to support this project if it proceeds, but there might be some broader infrastructure required community-wide, including maybe housing.
Lyndall.
So many questions, most of which are quite detailed, so I'm trying to avoid those ones. Firstly, you said that it's a complex application and requires many different kinds of consent. Do you foresee some challenges around who's enforcing what parts of consents? Should there be a need for checking, and are there opportunities there for collaboration, or do you foresee some kind of confusion over who's going to check for what?
That's a really good point, and we've struck a little bit with the contact process as well, because they also need wildlife act approvals as well as resource consents. And we've got, say, biodiversity functions, which we have, but they also have, albeit in a different legislative context. So if we don't get the conditions right, it could be confusing, and we need to make sure that any conditions are clear as to who is the enforcement agency and what are you basically charged with enforcing. And that's where our compliance team have been doing some good work in this space, because we don't want to be in a scenario where this project or anything else, there's an issue arises, which maybe might not have been anticipated by anybody. There's a few unknowns and variables here, and then suddenly it's unclear where the bar was or who's even charged with enforcing it. So definitely a very good point. We'll certainly be focusing on that.
Yeah, because I can see, if there was a disease,
Yeah.
velvet leaf,
Yeah.
who's in charge, who's paying.
Yeah.
So an important point to get ahead of. The other two questions I have is the site itself won't require a great deal of energy per se, but it will have lights and things. So what do we need to be concerned about the energy requirements? And given that there's going to be some onshore production facilities or whatever, energy for those.
Yeah, obviously the facilities themselves, the lighting and things that is required for navigational safety purposes is mainly solar powered. So they don't need a cable or anything to power the farm. When they get the product to land, obviously they need energy to process, and also they'll need fuel in the barges to get it in and out. So certainly there's some energy issues, and as was discussed this morning, is if there's an energy crunch, then they'll be affected like everyone else is. Land-based facilities, obviously, they'd probably be looking to tap into the existing infrastructure and rough if it happened there. But probably our key infrastructure pressure point could be water supply, because if you're processing, have worked in that industry, if you're processing stuff, you normally need a pretty good water supply for wash down and hygiene and that sort of thing. So that could be a bit of a pressure point.
And the last thing, sorry, was you mentioned remediation, but is there anything about maintenance, ongoing maintenance within that?
There is a suite of conditions around that, but certainly it's the sort of thing that needs, it's a pretty harsh environment. It's not like build it and forget about it. It's going to need a thorough, robust maintenance program, but we can certainly add that to a key point.
Yeah, certainly don't want bits of things flushing off.
No, and it has happened elsewhere.
Yeah,
absolutely. So not suggesting they're intending to do that, but it's not unheard of that these things get significantly damaged by storm events.
Just existing. Yes. Thank you.
John. There's a good point Morris made. I said a quick Google, 34% rise and 35% faster temperature rise in Murihiku waters in recent times. But the question is around inputs and sourcing of feed and such like. How much control does consenting have around that? Does that become part of an industry standard?
Yeah, normally the consent process may specify some parameters around maximum values in the feed, where they get the feed from and how it's manufactured and all the rest of it normally probably wouldn't be covered in a consent process. So whether they choose to make it locally or they...
Yeah, but is it a risk? Is it a risk if I guess my question is it a risk?
It's a risk of, I think, if it wasn't covered to the point where their modelling and effects are sort of predicated on a certain category and a feed makeup. So I would expect that the panel will put some parameters around that, so you can't suddenly feed something completely different, which creates a new contaminant that creates new adverse effect. There's been discussion at a more of a macro level around whether there could be an industry developed in Southland to produce the feed, and whether you can do some other things like use components, feed-in components like seaweed and things like that that might have some positive environmental benefit. Some of that's probably a little bit outside the consent process, but I would expect the panel would put some parameters around the feed.
I've got a couple of questions before you hear it. Just in regards, actually talking about all the infrastructure, this is one of them. This has a mate with the owner in the port. From this is understanding where this is the capital involved, and there will be probably expansion around the port to accommodate some of this stuff. And that's certainly as a council we need to take note of where this stuff is. And I know that are trying to assess the investment in that might need it to deal with this into the future, not just when it starts, but how big it will get. And that probably comes to the next question is, have they worked out how much area could possibly be in? This is the start.
Yeah.
And looking ahead, of, is there endless area in regards to some,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just
Probably not
saying.
really their job, but I think it was probably our job to do that. But certainly something around marine spatial planning, it's obviously a focus for our regional spatial plan would be to, yeah, you could do a marine spatial exercise with input from the likes of NPI and all those sorts of things to identify preferred areas for this type of facility to go in, which recognises, you know, cultural sensitivities, navigational safety routes, existing things like the oyster beds, all those sorts of things. Maybe there's an argument for staying away from Fiordland coastline, maybe not, that's not my call, but like you could probably throw a net over a series of variables and you'd end up with some indicative draft mapping that might be, ideally you could direct people to those areas. Marlborough's probably leading the charge on this work nationally. They've done some work on that, and some of their work has been about moving some of their historical inshore marine farms, if you know Havelock and the Kenepuru and Rua Sounds, Kenepuru in particular. You've got a series of pretty small scale marine farms that are quite close into the coast and don't have a lot of tidal movement and that sort of thing. So they've done a bit of a marine spatial planning exercise to move things out of it. And, they've done some good thinking on that. So if we were going to be doing the exercise, we'd probably look to connect to them.
Just on that, sorry, as an additional reminder that it is, who was here may recall, and I think it was 2021, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a agriculture settlement area gazetted right next to the space that we are currently looking at. So that is also here in that same vicinity.
Eric?
I'm still on fecal matters. One of the justifiable criticisms of fish farming, particularly where there's residential aquaculture, which isn't moved, are the fecal deserts underneath them, particularly the ones in the Marlborough Sounds.
Yeah.
So what do we know about ocean ranching and what mitigation might they want to put in place that minimises or handles that?
Yeah, that's probably, yeah, the inshore ones were the ones I sort of talked about in Marlborough Sounds before. Open ocean, they get the benefit of tidal flow and the distribution that goes with that. They've done a lot of modelling around that, and they've also done a lot of modelling around the rate at which they feed, trying to maximise the efficiency of that, so the stuff that's not eaten and falling through is minimised. They've also done a study around dissolved oxygen because the fish are respiring the whole time they're in the pens, so they have an effect on dissolved oxygen in the water as well. None of those have flagged any significant concern.
Cool, thank you.
Rob. Yeah, look, just on that one, I know they've done a lot of work in Tasmania around around feeding, and they've got cameras and technology so that when the feed starts dropping through, they cut the feed. You know, so they don't want to overfeed. If it's coming through, if it's going through, they stop it. The other thing is around the areas mapped. The areas mapped. There's a lot of work done in Swords around identifying areas where you could have agriculture. It's 10 years old now, but it's probably still pretty valid. I know they did some work around things, places like Port Pegasus and Port Adventure, but they ran into sea lion colonies and all of those things that cause a problem. So, but MPI has also done a lot of work in this space.
Sorry, yep, good. Oh.
Yeah. Bruce, just you talked about the entomologist that's part of the panel, was it? Yeah. So I know some of the information I've seen about the open ocean ranching and off the coast of Scotland, they've got some real challenges around sea lice and to other. Yeah. So I'm not sure whether it's part of the consent or part of because it's presenting a real challenge to some of the local or some of the indigenous, indigenous species. So yeah, there needs to be something in there somewhere somehow.
Yeah, that's a totally valid point, and the ecologist on the panel, Norrie Phillips, has done a lot of this work, but also, as mentioned, they need a series of MPI biosecurity approvals, and that's MPI is very closely scrutinising those aspects as Councillor Roy commented, it wasn't all that long ago that there was a anemia issue in Bigori, and there were a lot of pain for ripping up those existing operations. And so we've had that experience, albeit in a different context, but it's really important that as part of the sustainability aspect of it. What the fast track process does is effectively rolls all those different legislative approvals into one. So at the same time we're looking at it, MPI, biosecurity team are also all over it.
Yes, another question emerged, and it was probably triggered by Rob's comment around Tasmania and using technology. But in terms of understanding before and after effects, is it a case where we've either got a really good understanding of here's what the current condition is, so that over time we can monitor changes against the condition of the site beforehand? And in a kind of associated with that, is there a reference site somewhere else that is of a similar nature where there's no agriculture occurring? So over time you can say, well, this has changed in this respect. We can attribute this change to some other things like climate change or something, and understand or separate out the changes that may have resulted from agriculture versus the changes from other effects that might be playing out in the environment. Space.
I think the first one, they've had monitoring equipment here since 2018. So they've got a pretty good baseline monitoring for this existing site. As to whether there's another control site in that area or in this coastline, not to my knowledge, but I stand to be corrected on that. I'm not sure we're doing. Do we do anything?
It would be interesting to have a control site.
Yeah. It would be, in fact, obviously depending on resourcing, that could be something that we might want to consider doing for our science program, because this is going to be an ongoing focus area.
And understanding that, whether it's feasible to identify a site that has got a similar characteristics and attributes that might not be feasible. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how complex or changing or variable is the environment.
I think so. As part of the conditions, I appreciate that this could look like a, go and construct and in stage one and away you go. Built into the conditions, the idea is a series of monitoring. Yesterday we talked about a traffic light system almost around ensuring once operations begin in the certain stages through the certain aspects, that those things are well known. What is happening here? What happens next? Is there a trigger point that needs to then change tack, et cetera, throughout the various aspects? So.
Yeah, and I guess I'm asking these questions because without being any disrespect for any dairy farmers in the sector, if we've learned one thing, it's trying to get ahead of and anticipate issues so that we're not trying to fix something afterwards. And so it's understanding that if we let certain new ventures run ahead of regulations, that we can get caught out and be involved in a very costly sort of exercise to try and recover gains in the environment.
Right, and it's a good point. And as has been mentioned earlier, there have been some issues with these operations elsewhere in the world. So while the technology is pretty well established, there's not like no issues. So certainly we have take the opportunity that we've got to have the same.
Yeah. Okay, one more from there.
Yeah. This is, if the consent goes through at the size which is expected, it will substantially increase the need for salmon feed. And at the moment, I think it's pretty much all imported from Tasmania and various other sources. Is there any work being done on what might be able to be a new industry in Southland or in New Zealand to produce the feedstuffs that will be required?
Certainly where the Great South has looked at the potential for that, as part of the broader suite of things that an established aquaculture industry or an industry might drive or need. I can't take that any further as to whether there's anything specific. Okay. I'm not aware of it.
It's been noted though.
It's been noted.
Thank you.
Steve talked about that this morning.
Yeah.
Steve talked about that this morning, saying there's quite a few different plans.
But
use omega-3.
Needs a bit more than talk.
Yeah, I think they've done some work on it.
So, comfortable.
Yeah, just
in regards
to draw that to a conclusion. If there's no specific further questions, the intention is that we will be framing our comments positively, recognising the linkage to Ngāi Tahu aspirations and the linkage to the agriculture strategy, but also focusing pretty carefully on the key environmental effects that we have normally would have jurisdiction over. And one other thing I haven't really touched on, just mentioned briefly, is that depending on who has status to this process, I suspect that some of the, like Forest and Bird, for example, were involved previously, and they raised some concerns and understandable ones around potential effects on taonga species and entanglement and that sort of thing. Totally valid to raise those sorts of issues. So, it's important that we take the opportunity while being supportive to make sure that the appropriate controls are in place.
I'm just going, is this live stream? It is, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, just about that monitoring. I just recall, it just made me think of what Meridian have done in Doubtful Sound. You know, they have an extensive monitoring program in Doubtful Sound, and then they have comparison sites elsewhere, elsewhere, Dusky Sound and that, to see that the differences are not, you know, you can measure the differences when you, like Phil talked before about that. I think it'd be important to have something like that in there.
Meridian have some remote monitoring boards that provide a lot of information, so so there's examples of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking about changes in species composition and that type of thing.
Just quickly.
Yeah, really quickly, the byproducts of the production, that will be covered in consenting for the production, processing.
The processing
plants,
facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
Along with
a
the water.
visibility around that as you, and whether it needs any use consent depends on how they do it. Yeah.
There's a lot of good fertiliser coming your way.
Just like I'm pretty comfortable with things, and just from the point it's getting highly scrutinised. Like there's a fair, every angle's been looked at through this process. It's been a long process, and also been sort of ground breaking. There's obviously enough with your eyes over and asking all the questions, so I think we were all comfortable with the process.
Yeah, just on that, Mr. Chairman, it's very obvious from the session with the panel yesterday, with it's a highly knowledgeable panel, and it's no rubber stamp as far as they're concerned. Kind of give it some really good, robust scrutiny, and rightly so. And especially when it's been through it too, it was declined, and they've had to review it, and then they've come back. So it's no. So you're happy with what's? Yeah.
Sorry, Rob. Just in terms of the process, Bruce, so you'll be framing up some comments, and then you come back to the council again at some stage?
Yeah, the intention, based on the timetable that they've given us, the formal comment stage starts on the 30th of March and runs to the 30th of April. So our intention is to frame up a covering report and our draft comments for the meeting on the 29th. So to inform that, I was keen to test the water today and make sure that we're not on some wild tangent that you wouldn't support. So the vibe I've got is that you're generally supportive, subject to appropriate conditions, and that's sort of how we'll frame it up.
To focus on sustainability, so level of comfort with that.
Yeah.
Yep. All good.
Some serious questions have been here today, and I think, you know, we want to make use of what advantage we might have, but we're also very cautious about protection of the environment. The balance is there, isn't it?
That's right. And the other part of that is once the panel makes a decision, then they're out of it, and we get with what the outcome is. So it's important that as one of the regulators, we've got things that we can monitor and enforce if necessary. All good. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
We're not opening the door to a whole raft of.
Very good.
Are we done now, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, is that right? That's it.
Yeah, that's all very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The power, right? To see the